Chapter 984. Levin? Hisoko looked at the pool of blood on the ground and couldn't help but be stunned. How long has it been since I suffered such a serious injury? If he remembered correctly, ever since he became a 2-star great mage, he had never suffered any injuries. After becoming a magus, not to mention getting injured, anyone who dared to fight him head-on with the intention of harming him had basically disappeared. The last time he experienced the feeling of being injured to the point of vomiting blood was probably decades ago. It was so far away that he had long forgotten what it was like. Now that he experienced it again, it made him feel extremely unfamiliar, and even a little panicked. However, what he felt the most was anger. That bastard actually dared to set a trap to injure me. Levin? Haysock slowly stood up and stared at the new Flight Commerce main base in the distance. His eyes were filled with anger, but his expression remained calm. Although his heart was full of anger, after the probing just now, he found that he was indeed in a very awkward situation now. Around him was a barrier formed by the chaotic mana space that perfectly enveloped him from top to bottom, left to right and in all directions. Because once he entered this chaotic magic space, even with his strength as an archmage, he couldn't stabilize the magic elements in the space and couldn't successfully use magic. Therefore, if he wanted to pass through this barrier, he could only rely on his physical strength to walk over without relying on magic. However, the attack that caused him to vomit blood just now made him understand that Sui had carefully set up this trap, and would definitely not let him leave so easily. Once he entered the chaotic mana space, the other party would take advantage of the gap when he could not use magic to attack him. If he had not reacted fast enough and forcibly used all his mana to form a mana shield, the violent explosion just now would have been enough to shatter his bones. After all, although his magical abilities as a magus were incomparably powerful, his physical strength was still only that of an ordinary person. In fact, the attack just now had even caused the magical elements in the chaotic space to become even more agitated. If he were to endure another attack like that, the magical elements in the space would be enough to tear him apart. Therefore, he didn't even dare to try to enter that space again. Since this guy has the ability to set up such a strange space, why didn't he just throw this space around me and use those attacks that aren't affected by the chaotic magic elements to kill me? Levin? The question in Hisoko's heart flashed and was instantly answered. Sui clearly had some misgivings about his abilities as an archmage. If he forcefully changed the stability of the magic elements around him, he would definitely be the first to notice and react. And now, the barrier formed by the chaotic magic space was nearly 5 kilometers away from his current location, just outside the range of his magic reaction. Levin? Hisoko was very puzzled. How did Sui know that this was the limit of his mana sensing range? It had to be known that even though Sui had Master Carmilla as a reference, every magus had a different range of magic sensitivity. Every magus had a different understanding of magic, so their range of reaction was even more different. Levin? Hisoko was an expert in space magic, so his range of magic sensitivity was naturally extraordinary, even far beyond other magi. Sui wanted to deduce his strength from Camilla, a newly promoted magus who had only been a magus for a few years, but it was impossible for him to guess correctly. After frowning and thinking for a while, Levin? Hisoko shook his head and no longer thought about these meaningless questions. He narrowed his eyes and sized up the strange space in front of him that looked the same, but in fact, the magic elements were incomparably berserk. He coldly smiled. You want to trap me here with just this little trap? Sui, you are underestimating a magus too much. Levin? Hisoko instantly roused all the mana in his body, and a large area of space around him suddenly collapsed. The scenery within the space was completely distorted, showing a strange appearance. With Hisoko as the center, all the mana gathered towards him. This is Levin? One of Hisoko's most proficient space magic space collapse. Not to mention the power of this space magic. Once it was activated, all the magic elements in the space would instantly revolve around Levin. With Hisoko as the core, it would operate, relying on the incomparably powerful magic power of a magus and his superb control over magic elements. As long as he continued to expand the range of this space collapse, Levin, Hisoko was confident that he would be able to control the chaotic magic elements in the space, thus directly solving the barrier created by this chaotic magic space. Although this method was slightly troublesome and consumed a lot of magic power, it was undoubtedly the most reliable method in this situation, because Sui and New Flyer would definitely continue to attack, not giving him a chance to escape. This spatial collapse spell allowed the caster to take control of the mana in the surrounding space. In other words, it was equivalent to forming an alternative mana shield that could withstand all powerful attack. Sure enough, it's Levin? Just as the space around Hisoko started collapsing, several dozen sparks suddenly lit up in the distance. They then crossed over a kilometer and penetrated the chaotic mana space barrier before flying over. Humph. Child's play. Levin? Hisoko coldly snorted and simply ignored them. Those dozens of sparks were instantly thrown into the collapsing space around him, but before they could even explode, they were crushed into countless pieces, unable to pose any threat at all. Hee Sui, when I get out of here, I'll destroy New Flyer bit by bit in front of you. I'll let you see your most precious chamber of commerce being slowly destroyed and let you experience the deepest pain. Levin? Hisoko laughed wildly and continued to urge his magic power to accelerate the expansion of the collapsing magic space. But at this moment, he suddenly felt dozens of abnormally obvious mana fluctuations coming from all directions. Levin? Hisoko was startled. His surroundings were clearly enveloped by the chaotic magic space barrier, and it was reasonable to say that even if there were any magic fluctuations from the outside world, they shouldn't be able to pass through. Moreover, the radius of this barrier was nearly 5 kilometers high, and he was currently on one side, which meant that he was nearly 10 kilometers away from the barrier on the other side. But even at such a distance, he could still sense the mana fluctuations. Moreover, the feeling was exceptionally clear, and there was no falsehood. The range of his mana detection was definitely not that exaggerated. There was only one explanation for this, and that was that the mana fluctuations were truly too powerful, to the point that even the chaotic mana barrier was unable to completely block them off. At the same time, it also caused Galen, who was far away from the range of his mana detection, to be unable to sense anything. Hisoko could also clearly sense it. But with such powerful magic fluctuations, even an ordinary forbidden spell was far from comparable. To be able to produce such terrifying magic fluctuations, it was simply not something a mage could control. Even a grand magus didn't have this ability. It could only be the power of nature itself. However, it was still reasonable for this kind of power to appear in one place, but it was too strange for it to appear in dozens of places at the same time. It can't be that Sui and the Frestek Chamber of Commerce did this, right? Levin? This conjecture emerged in Hisoko's mind, but he immediately rejected it. Impossible. Such terrifying magic fluctuations simply weren't something a human could control. The Frestek Chamber of Commerce's strongest magician was Archmagus Camilla, so even if he used all his strength, it was impossible for him to use such terrifying magic fluctuations. It was even more impossible to use several dozen at once. Thinking of this, Levin? Hisoko no longer paid attention to him, and continued to focus on urging his magic to accelerate the collapse of the surrounding magic space. Seeing that the collapsed mana space was about to connect with the chaotic mana space, Levin Garen's eyes lit up. Hisoko felt that the dozens of abnormally terrifying magic fluctuations he sensed just now had become stronger. What the hell is that kid Sui doing? Sensing the abnormally terrifying power hidden in the dozens of magic fluctuations, even if it was Levin? Hisoko couldn't help feeling a trace of panic in his heart. If these dozens of magic fluctuations were allowed to develop, the final effect might cause all the magic elements in the surrounding dozens of kilometers to explode at the same time. That would be equivalent to a huge magic space collapsing completely, and the consequences would be unimaginable. Even with an optimistic estimate, everything within a radius of several dozen kilometers would be pulverized by the chaotic elemental mana. No person or creature would be able to survive in this space. In comparison, the collapse of the mana space that he had actively created was no different from a child's toy. Is that guy crazy? Levin? Hisoko was both anxious and angry. In order to kill me, that kid actually wants to use this new flyer to perish together with me? While thinking of this question, Levin? Hisoko urged his magic with all his might. The collapsing magic space he created finally connected with the chaotic magic space. As he expected, the magic elements in that space, which were originally in an extremely chaotic state, were instantly affected by his powerful magic and began to revolve bit by bit. At this rate, as long as he was given a little more time, he would be able to easily penetrate the barrier of this collapsing magic space and successfully escape. But did he think he was Levin? Just as a trace of surprise rose in Hisoko's heart, dozens of incomparably gorgeous white rays of light suddenly shot over from all directions. The speed of the light rays didn't slow down to Levin at all. Hisoko didn't have time to react. As soon as they appeared, they had already bombarded Levin. Hisoko's location. Levin? Hisoko only had time to sense the terrifying and unstoppable magical energy contained in the dozens of light beams. Then, he noticed that the collapsing mana space around him instantly melted under the white light. Then, his body began to melt. Chapter 985. Boom! After an incomparably dazzling white light exploded, a mushroom cloud rose high in the distance. Even though they were 10 kilometers away from the explosion site, Sui and everyone around him could clearly feel the ground shaking. A moment later, a huge explosion could be heard in the air. Even though they were 10 kilometers away, the sound was still deafening. After waiting for a moment, Sui took off the dark anti-dazzling glass lens hanging on his nose and said to Akali, "Expand the range of the chaotic magic barrier, and scan the location of the explosion for life aura and mana fluctuations. Determine if Levin Hazsak is dead." The group looked at the mushroom cloud slowly rising in the distance with sluggish expressions. After Sui reminded her a second time, Akali finally understood and turned to look at Sui in a daze. Sir Chairman, you said that Magus, he's dead?" Hearing this question, everyone turned to look at Sui at the same time, similarly sluggish and at a loss. Seeing their reactions, Sui didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Were these guys still unwilling to believe that a Magus had died? But it made sense when he thought about it. Magi had always been the most powerful figures in the signs. In the minds of most people, they wouldn't die for any reason other than natural death. "You'll know once you scan for life aura and mana fluctuations," Sui said unhappily. "Ah?" Even the usually lively Akali was still somewhat sluggish at this time. After hearing Sui's command, she woodenly turned to the control panel in front of her and pressed 2 buttons. There was a magic illusion projection that lit up on the control panel. It showed the area that they had been monitoring the entire time, the area where Sui had led Raven Hazsak to a duel. Everyone immediately gathered around and stared at the magic illusion projection with extremely nervous expressions. 2 ripples, one in front and one behind, slowly moved from left to right. This meant that the life aura and mana fluctuation detection arrays that New Flyer had set up in this area were still working. Everyone stared at these 2 ripples, their gazes following them as they moved from the leftmost to the rightmost part of the illusion. The first ripple, representing life aura, swept across the illusion and didn't leave any light spots that represented life aura. The second wave, which represented the detection of magic waves, swept across the illusion, leaving behind a large mass of messy lines of light, but not a single conspicuous spot of light. From the results of these two scans, it could be determined that there was no living person in that area. Of course, it was obvious that no one could have survived such a terrifying explosion. However, everyone was still unwilling to believe it and urged Akali to scan 2 more times, but the results were still the same. Akali raised her head once more and looked at Sui with an expression of disbelief. "Sir Chairman, could it be that the Archmage, he really died? What? Do you feel that the death of an Archmagus is hard to accept?" Sui asked with a smile. Everyone nodded in unison. "There's nothing unacceptable about this." Sui shrugged with a relaxed expression. "Archmages are still humans in the end, not gods. When they receive an attack that exceeds what they can withstand, they will still die. This isn't strange." But Akali couldn't help but swallow her saliva, not knowing what to say for a moment. Although she had participated in the entire plan against the Archmage and had been in control of the entire operation just now, even pressing the attack button on Levinhas herself, she still couldn't accept that the other party had actually died. This was an Archmage. God above, what kind of person was an Archmage? They were the people who stood at the peak of all mages. The people closest to gods. Although it wasn't that there hadn't been cases of Archmages dying in signs, the most recent accidental death of an Archmage had happened more than 1,000 years ago. Along with the disappearance of the Grand Magi on this continent, the Magi had already become the high and mighty figures on this continent. Not to mention their accidental fall, there was simply no one outside of the Magi who would have any thoughts of enmity towards them, all right. However, this time, apart from Sui, there wasn't a single Grand Magus in their group. Even Sui hadn't really made a move, but he had successfully killed an Archmage? This was simply too inconceivable. Seeing the expressions of disbelief on everyone's faces, Sui shook his head helplessly. After all, he had transmigrated from Earth. He wasn't like the natives of Signs who thought that Archmages were high and mighty figures that couldn't be offended. Although the power of that last attack was indeed terrifying, in Sui's opinion, it was still worlds apart from the ultimate weapons on Earth, the power of a nuclear bomb. As the strongest Archmage, Levinhas couldn't even withstand such an attack, which made Sui feel somewhat disappointed. Of course, this result had already been confirmed in countless previous experiments, so it wasn't unexpected. Akali and the others had actually been participating in the experiments that Mentor Carmilla had personally participated in. The reason why they hadn't accepted this fact was that this matter was too challenging their traditional views. Looking back at the mushroom cloud that was gradually dissipating in the distance, Sui revealed a trace of a smile. Successfully killing the Archmage Levinhas this time wasn't as simple as preventing a disaster from befalling the new Flight Commerce main base. More importantly, it was the significance of this matter. For everyone in Signs, Archmages represented a high and mighty existence that couldn't be defeated. Once a country had an Archmage, it was equivalent to having a nuclear weapon on Earth as a deterrent to other countries. But now, Sui had used facts to shatter this myth, telling everyone that Archmages weren't that scary. This was equivalent to completely subverting everyone's inherent views. Sui could completely imagine what kind of commotion this news would cause once it spread. For example, if this group of people in front of him wanted to digest this news, it would probably take a long time. Just as he was thinking about the consequences and what he needed to do to deal with it, Sui suddenly felt a similar magic fluctuation in the surrounding space. Sui, as well as Akali and the others who were still in a daze, tensed up at the same time, but then relaxed. The black spatial ripples that represented teleportation magic dissipated, and Mentor Carmilla's figure appeared before everyone's eyes. Seeing everyone's expressions as if they were facing a great enemy, Mentor Carmilla waved her hand and asked Sui, "What's the situation?" Sui asked in return, "Grandfather, why did you suddenly come? Where's the other Archmage? Did you guys decide the victor?" Mentor Carmilla frowned. Halfway through the battle, he suddenly ran away. I couldn't stop him. Did something happen to you guys? Why do you all have such expressions? Sui turned his head to look at Akali and the others who still hadn't reacted. He shrugged and said, "It's nothing. It's just that an Archmage just died and these guys are a bit unable to accept it." Dead? Mentor Carmilla rushed to Sui's side with an agility that didn't match his age, grabbing him by the collar. "You said he's dead?" Sui looked at Mentor Carmilla in shock, thinking that his reaction was much greater than Akali and the others. Perhaps it was because he was also an Archmage, so they were in the same boat? He should be dead. Really dead? You're not joking? Where's the corpse? Mentor Carmilla immediately asked. All right, I can only be more than 90% sure that he's dead. As for the corpse, Sui spread his hands. It should have been blown to smithereens. There's no corpse to speak of at all. Mentor Carmilla raised his head to look in the direction of the explosion. His expression changed, and in the next moment, his body had already disappeared into thin air. After a moment, he reappeared with a strange-looking ring in his hand. What is this? Seeing Mentor Carmilla staring at the ring with a complicated expression, Sui asked curiously. Mentor Carmilla sighed softly. This should be the famous ring of the Doomsday Elves. It is said to be one of the secret treasures of the Elven royal family. It has always been in the hands of Levin Haysock. Levin Haysock would never casually throw away such a precious secret treasure. So, he should really be dead. Oh, Sui casually responded, and the last trace of worry in his heart faded away. After all, he wasn't an Archmage, so he didn't know if Archmages had any special life-saving means. Now that even Mentor Carmilla said that Levin Haysock was dead, he could completely relax. Mentor Carmilla sighed again, and threw the ring of the Doomsday Elves to Sui. Take this ring. It is said that the ring of the Doomsday Elves contains a great secret of the elves. It is also a very powerful magic tool. Keep it and it can help you improve your magic level. In addition, with the existence of this ring, it should make the news of Levin Haysock's death more credible. Hearing Mentor Carmilla's last sentence, Sui was slightly stunned. Don't look at me like that, I know what you are thinking. Mentor Carmilla turned to look at the explosion area in the distance, and a trace of desolation flitted across her expression. After today, the status of mages on the continent will probably undergo an earth-shattering change. This world no longer belongs to the world of mages. Isn't this a good thing? Sui smiled slightly. Mages are still special, but people don't need to revere them, but should respect them. The status and value of mages still hasn't changed, it's just that the field has changed. Mentor Carmilla looked deeply at Sui and nodded lightly. I hope so. Chapter 986. Year 3793 of the Continental Calendar was destined to be a turbulent year for signs. First of all, at the beginning of the year, the Magicians' Union headquarters had categorized New Flyer as an unwelcome company and listed it as a company that all magicians on the continent must avoid. This kind of action had only been done 4 times in the history of the Sorcerers' Guild in the past thousands of years. And every time, the company that was targeted was a company that had committed a great crime and was notorious on the continent. The Sorcerers' Guild's actions were completely reasonable. But this time, the target of the Magicians' Union headquarters was New Flyer, a company that had a clean record and had never done anything bad. They even had good relations with countless countries on the continent and were praised by countless people. Naturally, this caused countless people on the continent to question them. But what was truly shocking was New Flyer's subsequent reaction. Normally speaking, when a company was targeted by the Magicians' Union headquarters, their first choice would be to find a way to reconcile. This was because the Sorcerers' Guild's influence on signs was too great. There was no benefit in going against them directly. But not only did New Flyer not give any face to the Magicians' Union headquarters, they publicly announced that they had broken off relations with the Magicians' Union headquarters and even directly invaded the Mana Magic Kingdom, a special kingdom backed by the Sorcerers' Guild. And they won. Just as the people were still digesting the waves of shocking news, another even more shocking news broke out, causing the entire continent to be speechless. Levin Hasek and Salander Cray, these two famous magicians on the continent, attacked the New Flight Commerce main base together, but in the end they were defeated. After Salander Cray the sorcerer was defeated, he returned to the Mana Magic Kingdom. It was said that he had been hiding in his magic tower to recover from his injuries, and the Archmage Levin Hasek who had gone with him had died. According to the news released by the New Flyer, when Archmagus Levin Hasek attacked the New Flight Commerce main base, he was met with a resolute counterattack from the New Flyer. In the end, he was defeated and killed. When this news spread, not only were all the magicians on the continent shocked, even the commoners were extremely shocked. He was an Archmage. How could he die? However, after New Flyer released some of the recordings of Levin Hasek and Salander Clay attacking the New Flight Commerce main base, as well as the Elven Ring of Doomsday that New Flyer had kept in Archmage Levin Hasek's possession, the doubts in most people's hearts were finally confirmed. Archmage Levin Hasek was indeed dead. Otherwise, with his formidable strength as an Archmage, who would have the ability to snatch the Elven Ring of Doomsday from him? However, compared to the Elven Ring of Doomsday, everyone was more concerned about another issue. Was Archmage Levin Hasek really killed by the several white lights shown in the recordings released by the New Flyer? Although from the recordings, the several white lights did indeed possess great power, Levin Hasek was an Archmage after all. Even if he couldn't resist such a terrifying attack, he should at least be able to dodge it. How could he have been killed? This was too illogical. However, regarding the news released by the New Flyer, whether it was Salander Cray the sorcerer who had gone with him to the New Flight Commerce main base, or the Mana Magic Kingdom who should be responsible for this matter, none of them gave any response. Thus, everyone instantly understood that this news was most likely true. However, once the news was confirmed to be true, the entire signs instantly went into an uproar. The last time an Archmage on this continent fell due to an accident was over 1,000 years ago. Who would have thought that after 1,000 years, another Archmage would suddenly fall? What was even more shocking was that the enemy of this Archmage wasn't a legendary Grand Magus, nor was it a Grand Magus. It was a mere Grand Magus and his subordinates. As everyone knew, the higher the level of a Magus, the greater the gap between them. There was already an insurmountable gap between a Grand Magus and an ordinary Magus, and an Archmage was a level higher than a Grand Magus. In theory, not to mention a Grand Magus leading a group of subordinates, even 10 Grand Magi wouldn't be able to pose any threat to an Archmage. Even if you gathered 100 great mages, you might be able to suppress a Grand Magus, but it would be impossible to kill a Grand Magus. Or to put it more bluntly, in the current situation where there were no Grand Magi on signs, an Archmage wouldn't be killed unless he wanted to die. This was the main reason why Archmages were actively roped in by all the countries on the continent, and also why they were a powerful weapon to intimidate other countries. Although Archmages were limited by tradition and wouldn't participate in invading other countries, they weren't limited to their personal actions. This could be seen from the attack of the Frestek Chamber of Commerce's main base by the two Archmagi, Levin Hasek and Salander Clay. Both of them were Archmages of the Mana Magic Kingdom. If it wasn't for the fact that the Mana Magic Kingdom was being attacked by the New Flyer, why would they attack the New Flight Commerce main base for no reason, and even attempt to kill the New Flyer's president, Sui? It was clear that they were under the orders of the Mana Magic Kingdom, or the Magicians' Union headquarters behind the Mana Magic Kingdom. However, the result was that Salander Clay was defeated, and Levin Has-Sok died in battle. No one believed that Levin Has-Sok would actively seek death, so the only explanation was that he couldn't even escape before being killed by the new flyer. This fact was simply unbelievable. How did the new flyer do it? If this was true, didn't it mean that the new flyer also had the ability to kill other archmages? If the Frestek Chamber of Commerce really had the ability to kill other archmagi, the meaning of this was just too terrifying. Some people also thought of the new flyer's guards suddenly invading the Mana Magic Kingdom. Before this, many people thought that the new flyer's actions were too stupid, and they didn't consider the consequences. Even if the new flyer's guards defeated the Mana Magic Kingdom's Glory Magician Legion with their own valiant fighting strength, the Mana Magic Kingdom still had 5 archmages. These 5 archmages wouldn't follow the Mana Magic Kingdom's army to invade other countries, but they could secretly take action to retaliate against the new flyer, and no one would have any objections to their retaliatory actions. But now that the news of Archmage Levin Has-Sok being killed by the new flyer had spread, everyone realized that the new flyer's invasion of the Mana Magic Kingdom was most likely premeditated. The new flyer clearly had the ability to kill an archmage, which was why they did it on purpose. This caused the Mana Magic Kingdom to retaliate, which ultimately led to the fall of Archmage Levin Has-Sok. So now came the question. The new flyer had successfully killed Archmage Levin Has-Sok, but what method did they use to kill him? They could kill an archmage, but did they have the ability to kill multiple archmages? Perhaps the new flyer's current ability could only kill one archmage, and they wouldn't be able to handle another? But no one would personally verify this question. Only archmages had the qualifications to verify it, but there were only 28 archmages on the continent. Now that Archmage Levin Has-Sok had fallen, there were only 27 left, and one of them was Mentor Carmilla, who would definitely stand on the side of the new flyer. Of the remaining 26 archmages, which archmage would risk their lives to verify this question, and who would dare to force multiple archmages to risk their lives to verify it? No one knew the answer to this question. Everyone only knew that when the news of new flyer killing Archmage Levin Has-Sok spread, the Kanla Empire and the Mala Empire immediately signed a new cooperation agreement with the new flyer. Outsiders had no way of knowing the details of the agreement, but it was clear that in the new cooperation agreement between the two empires and the new flyer, a lot of preferential conditions were given to the new flyer. This was because after this, countless people and all kinds of magic machines from the new flyer flocked to the two empires. Following closely behind the two empires, almost every country on the continent took the initiative to apply to the new flyer for a strategic cooperation plan. This time, it wasn't these countries that were negotiating with the new flyer, but rather the new flyer, in turn, carried out a detailed inspection and review of each country before deciding whether to implement this strategic cooperation plan and how to implement it. Apart from these countries, the reactions of the commoners were even faster. Originally, the sales of new flyers' household magic machines had been increasing rapidly compared to last year, but after this news spread, countless orders from all over the continent flew to the new flyer. The orders were so many that if the new flyer's production had remained the same, it would have taken 3 years for the new flyer to continue relying on these orders. In the countries and regions where magic machines had just been promoted, other than the Frestek Chamber of Commerce, the household magic machines of the other magic machine companies that entered with the Frestek Chamber of Commerce were also very popular. But once this news came out, the Frestek Chamber of Commerce's products instantly became popular. In everyone's eyes, having a look at a new flyer's product wasn't just a necessity for daily life, it was even a kind of glory. A company that could kill an archmage naturally had the ability to surpass all other companies when it came to magic machines. This logic wasn't much, but it was the true thoughts of most commoners. Thus, after the news of the new flyer killing Archmage Levin Hasek spread, it only took half a year of year 3793 of the continental calendar for the new flyer to become a trend in the signs. It quickly swept through the entire continent with unstoppable momentum. Some people were happy about this situation, while others were worried. However, there were even more people who were helpless. In many people's eyes, although the new flyer was still a company, it was already like a newborn empire that was rapidly growing with unstoppable momentum. There would be a day when it could become a true empire that ruled over the entire continent. Chapter 987. Arafat Town was a normal town in the Fok Kingdom. It was located in the southeast part of the kingdom. Whether it was on the map or in reality, it was a very normal place. If one went 300 kilometers southwest from the town, they would reach the Drake Duchy that was next to the Fok Kingdom. If one went 500 kilometers north or 600 kilometers northeast, they would enter one of the two empires of the continent, the Mala Empire. If one went south, they would enter the Ansu Church's duchy that was sandwiched between the Lampari Kingdom and the Fok Kingdom. This kind of location wasn't strange at all, and it couldn't be considered important at all. So although Arafat Town had a history that was twice as long as the Fok Kingdom, it had always been unknown in the signs for thousands of years. The people of the town had always lived their own lives. However, this peaceful and ordinary life had changed a little 5 years ago. Since the Frestek Chamber of Commerce signed the Strategic Partnership Agreement with the Fok Kingdom 5 years ago, in these 5 years, the Frestek Chamber of Commerce had led large amounts of magic machine companies to invest in the Fok Kingdom, building all kinds of factories in the Fok Kingdom. Although Arafat Town didn't have any geographical advantages, so New Flyer didn't like this place and invested in it. As the Fok Kingdom began building roads, finally building a road to Arafat Town, a magic machine company from the Lampari Kingdom found this town and invested in building a household magic machine factory in the town. There were only two kinds of products in this factory. One was the magic fan and the other was the magic stove. They could be considered low-end products among household magic machines, but they suited the needs of Arafat Town and the surrounding area. So this year, the factory's profits had been quite good. Although the scale of this factory wasn't large, it still recruited more than 300 local workers from the town of Arafat, which greatly solved the work problem of the people in Arafat. Therefore, it was greatly welcomed and supported by the people around the town. In private discussions, the people of the town were full of gratitude to the Lampari Kingdom's Sanctus Chamber of Commerce, who had invested in the construction of the factory. If the Chamber of Commerce hadn't chosen Arafat to invest and build a factory, the people in the town would still be living a monotonous and poor life year after year, day after day, without any hope of change. Company was one of them. Originally, he was just a very ordinary civilian in the small town of Arafat. He could only rely on temporary jobs in various places, and at the same time, serve as a servant in a noble family to maintain his livelihood. Although they wouldn't starve to death every year, they could only maintain the most basic living conditions. They couldn't dream of anything else. But after the factory was established, Company applied to work in the factory and received a minimum wage of 10 gold coins a month, as well as a series of benefits that were not particularly rich but could not be ignored. This caused his and his family's lives to undergo a tremendous change in an instant. Now, although Company's family couldn't be as extravagant as those nobles and merchants, they no longer had to worry about the most basic needs of life. Even meat had reached the point where they could eat whenever they wanted. In addition, he would save a sum of money to buy a household magic machine every once in a while, so he always felt that his current life was so comfortable that it was like living in a dream. He sincerely hoped that this factory could continue to operate smoothly so that he and his family could continue to live such a comfortable life. Therefore, Company had always been the one who worked the hardest in the factory. In addition to being praised by his supervisor, which made his job more stable, it was also because he could receive an extra 2 gold coins a month as a bonus. Today was the day of the factory's monthly salary. According to the past practice, they would work for half a day in the morning, and after lunch, they would receive the previous month's salary. Then, they would have half a day off in the afternoon. After lunch, a group of workers excitedly received their salaries, and a group of people clamored to go to the town's bar to have fun together. However, when some familiar workmates came to invite company, they were rejected by him. "There are guests at home today, so I have to go back to receive them." Seeing the disappointed looks of the workers around him, Company revealed a smile. He took out a gold coin from his money bag and put it in the hand of the worker he was the closest to. "Although I can't go today, it's still the same as before. I've taken the bonus, so this gold coin is my treat." Everyone looked at the gold coin in that person's hand and curled their lips, not saying anything else. Company waved his hand to bid farewell to everyone. He left the factory on the outskirts and quickly headed back to his home in town. Because the factory was on the outskirts of the town, it was 4-5 kilometers away. If he walked on foot, it would take him at least 20 minutes to get back. Normally Company didn't care about this distance. He could even treat it as a leisurely stroll after work. But because he knew that there were guests at home today, he couldn't help being a bit anxious. He quickly jogged the entire way and rushed back as fast as he could. When he arrived at his home on the edge of the town, he was surprised to find that there was a magic sedan that was shining in the sun. It was slender and looked like a high-class magic sedan that was parked in the open space in front of his house. Including his youngest son Say, there was a group of children walking around the magic sedan with curious looks on their faces. Seeing that Say was about to reach out his dirty little hand to touch the magic sedan, Company roared out, "Stinky brat! Put your hand down!" Company rushed over, grabbed Say, and slapped him on the butt. "Why don't you see what this thing is? What if you break it?" Say pursed his lips, looking like he wanted to cry, but he didn't dare. The other children scattered, but they didn't run far. They kept looking at the magic sedan with curious gazes. It wasn't that the people of Arafat town hadn't seen magic sedans before. The mayor, Viscount Ressos, had one, and the Santis Chamber of Commerce's chairman of the factory that Company worked in also had one. He would drive it here when he came to inspect. But Viscount Ressos' magic sedan rarely came out and rarely parked outside. The Santis Chamber of Commerce's chairman rarely came to Arafat town, so there weren't many chances for people to see a magic sedan. Now that there was a magic sedan parked in front of a normal family in the commoners' district, naturally there would be countless people looking over. It wasn't just the children, there were also some adults around Company's house who were looking at the magic sedan in the distance. They were pointing at it, and quite a few people had looks of envy on their faces. Company looked at the people around him, and thinking that there were guests at home, he didn't greet them as he walked to the door with Say. When he came to the door, there was a person who came out. "Brother-in-law, let the children play if they like. The magic sedan isn't that easy to break." Company looked over and found that this person was a young man who seemed to be in his early 30s. He was wearing a light green suit made of material that was obviously not ordinary. He was also wearing a pair of leather boots that looked simple at first glance but were actually very cleverly designed. Just from his appearance alone, he seemed to be of a higher class than Viscount Ressos, who had always paid attention to his appearance as a noble. Company looked at this young man with a gentle smile, who didn't seem like a commoner, in surprise, and he was very doubtful. What did he just call him? Brother-in-law? While he was in a daze, a young girl came out of the door and revealed a sweet smile to Company. "Brother-in-law, you're back." After seeing this girl, Company finally reacted. This girl was his wife's little sister Winnie. Company had known her for over 10 years, so he was very familiar with her. Since it was like this, then this young man. Seeing Company turn to look at the young man, Winnie took the young man's arm with a smile. "Brother-in-law, let me introduce you. This is my husband Josiah. Josiah, this is brother-in-law. Brother-in-law and big sister have always been good to me, you have to treat them well." The young man named Josiah revealed a faint smile and gave company a bow. "Hello, brother-in-law, this is our first meeting. I am Winnie's husband Josiah. I come from the Lampari Kingdom's Banta City. Winnie often mentions you and big sister to me, saying that she has never forgotten how you have taken care of her since she was young." Company quickly waved his hand. "No, no, no, what are you saying? Winnie is Millie's little sister, of course we have to take care of her." While he was saying this, Say, who had been in Company's hand the entire time, couldn't take it anymore. He loudly said to Winnie, "Little aunt, Dad hit me." Company glared at him and wanted to reprimand him, but Winnie had already taken Say from his hand. She patted Say's shoulder and said in a gentle voice, "All right, Dad is just afraid that you'll cause trouble. Be good, come in, I just took out a lot of sweets." Hearing the words sweets, Say's eyes lit up. With a cheer, he charged into the room. Company helplessly shook his head. "Winnie, you'll spoil the child like this. I only have him and Hawat, these two little nephews. It's natural for me to spoil them a bit." Winnie giggled before suddenly asking, "That's right, brother-in-law, where's Hawat? He's already 10 this year, right? Have you thought of what to do with him?" Company's heart skipped a beat. He looked at Josiah, who had been smiling the entire time, and pointed at the door. "We'll talk after we go in." Chapter 988. Although Company's hut was just a small and cramped hut as before, the interior decoration was completely new. Not only were the walls repainted, but the ceiling was also reinstalled with wooden planks. At the very least, it looked decent and was no longer as shabby as before. After entering the hut, Company saw Zaire gnawing on a snack at the table, so he slapped him to the side and invited Winnie and Joshian to sit down. "Where's your sister?" Company asked Winnie as he sat down. "She said she wanted to prepare a delicious dinner for us, so she went to buy groceries," Winnie replied. "Nonsense." Company frowned. "She left the guests at home and went to buy groceries by herself? Doesn't she know to wait for me to come back?" Winnie waved her hand with a smile. "That's enough, brother-in-law. You know my sister. She can't hold anything back. I told her that Joshian and I are not guests at all. She doesn't need to be so polite, but she still wants to buy groceries. It's not necessary at all. No, you've only come back once in a few years, and this is brother-in-law's, Joshian's first time here. Of course, we have to treat him well." At this point, Company glanced at Joshua's neat and high-end clothes, and his expression was somewhat embarrassed. "It's just, we don't have anything good to treat you here. Joshian, I hope you don't mind. Brother-in-law, you're too polite." Perhaps because they met and introduced each other, Joshian changed the honorifics in his mouth, and seemed a little closer. "Winnie and I are not people who care about food. Besides, you and my sister are Winnie's closest relatives, so you're my family. There's no need to pay so much attention to family." Company scratched his head and chuckled, not knowing what to say for a moment. Seeing him like this, Winnie couldn't help but laugh. "All right, brother-in-law, let's not talk about this nonsense. Answer my question. What are you going to do with Hawat?" Hearing the topic about his eldest son, Company breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. After thinking for a while, he replied, "There's nothing to arrange, right? This kid can't become a magician, so I plan to let him learn the craft of magic machinery. When he grows up, it will be great if he can enter my current factory." "That won't do." Winnie shook her head immediately. "I talked to my sister just now. Brother-in-law, your idea doesn't seem wrong now, but you can't guarantee that the factory in town will still exist in the future, so you can't put all your hopes on it." Company was startled. "Why isn't this factory here?" "Well," Winnie frowned and thought for a moment. She pushed Joshian, who was beside her. "I can't explain it clearly. You tell brother-in-law. Josian revealed a smile. After thinking for a bit, he said, Brother-in-law, I've heard that the factory's main products are the magic fan and the magic stove, and they haven't changed in the past few years. Is that so? Yes, it's always been these two. What? Is there a problem? Company asked. There isn't a problem for now, but that might not be the case in the long term. Josian seemed like he was considering how to use his words. After pausing for a bit, he continued, The magic fan and the magic stove, these two magic machines are the lowest-end household magic machines. They can sell quite well around Arafat town right now, but that might not be the case in a few years. Because all the countries on the continent have been developing the magic machine industry, the Fok Kingdom isn't an exception. So if nothing unexpected happens, there will be more and more companies and factories producing household magic machines in the future. Like the magic fan and the magic stove, these two low-end household magic machines that don't require much technology, there will be many factories that can make them. Then this factory will face very strong competition in the future, and it's hard to say if it can keep its current profits. You mean that the factory won't be able to sell the things it makes in the future? I'm not certain, but there is this possibility because the competition will only become stronger. Josian said with a nod. Our Sir Chairman said something before. Any competition on the continent in the future will be a competition in terms of technology. If you can't surpass others in terms of technology, you will face the fate of being eliminated in the end. Your president? Company was stunned. Company was surprised. Oh, I forgot to tell you. Brother-in-law, Josian is an employee of New Flyer, and the Sir Chairman, he mentioned, is Chairman Sue of New Flyer. Oh, Suey, right? I know. Company kept nodding. Company nodded. Since it's an important person like Chairman Sue who said it, it must be right. Company knitted his brows. But Josian, according to what you said, this factory might close down. What do we do then? I didn't say that it would definitely close down, it's just a possibility. Josian continued, Of course, it's good to be able to prepare in advance. This brings us back to what Winnie said about Hawat's arrangement. Brother-in-law, you want Hawat to learn the craft of magic machinery. It's a good idea, but you can't just set your sights on this factory in Arafat town. You should look a little further. You mean? Josian turned to look at Winnie and saw her nod. He then turned to Company and said seriously, Brother-in-law, Winnie and my sister just discussed it. I have a better arrangement for Hawat and I hope you can agree. Tell me about it. Brother-in-law, New Flyer established a training academy for ordinary people 3 years ago to teach them the basic use of magic. At the same time, we also train them to master various knowledge of combining magic and machinery. The students who graduate from this academy will be directly recruited by New Flyer and will be trained to become the next generation of magic mechanical engineers. So I think that if Hawat can enter this academy, it's very likely that he will be able to work for New Flyer in the future. No matter what, it's much better than staying here and working in that factory, right? If he can work for New Flyer, of course it'll be many times better. But you just said magic. Hawat doesn't have magic talent at all? Company was still puzzled. No, according to the results of our Academy of Magic research 4 years ago, everyone has magic talent. It's just that some people have more obvious talent, so it's easier to show and have the opportunity to become a mage. Most people don't have obvious talent in magic and need a certain amount of guidance and teaching to be able to show it. Our Chamber of Commerce established this specialized training academy in order to verify this theory. Hawat may not have magic talent for other mages, but for the researchers of our Academy of Magic, it's not necessarily the case. You mean Hawat can learn magic? Company's eyes suddenly lit up. It's possible. But the magic he learns might not be the same as the ones you know. I know, it's the new type of magic that's often mentioned in the newspapers, isn't it? Company asked again. A trace of surprise appeared on Joshin's face. Brother-in-law, you actually know this. Ah, I don't mean to offend you. Company laughed and waved his hand. It's fine, I know what you mean. It's strange for a rough person like me to know this. And this is something I accidentally heard from someone reading the newspaper. If you want me to read the newspaper myself, I won't even be able to read, haha. Joshin's expression changed. Brother-in-law, speaking of not being able to read. Say should be 6 this year, right? Does he know how to read? Company immediately shook his head. No one has ever taught him. Of course he doesn't know. Then is there a place in Offerat where one can learn to read? There is, but it's a private classroom set up by the mayor, Viscount Rithos, for the children of nobles. Apart from the children of nobles, if the commoners want to study there, they have to pay 300 gold coins a year. I don't have that much money. Then, brother-in-law, do you think that if a school was set up in town to teach children how to read and write, and only charged 10 gold coins a year, would anyone be willing to come? Company was startled. Only 10 gold coins a year? Not to mention 10, even if it was 20, as long as there was such a school, I would throw these two brats in no matter what. Damn, I've suffered a lot because I can't read. Even if I want to learn more advanced knowledge about magic machines, it's very difficult to get a certificate of advanced skill. I don't want my two brats to suffer the same. It seemed that Company had suffered a lot in this regard, to the point that he couldn't help but curse. Joshin didn't mind at all. Instead, the smile on his face became even brighter. Brother-in-law, first tell me, do you agree with me and Winnie taking Hawat away and letting him enter our new Flyers Practical Magic Academy? Company looked at Joshin doubtfully. You can work in New Flyer after you graduate from this academy. Is it that easy to get in? Joshin smiled. I have a special quota, you don't need to worry about that. Is that so? Company frowned and thought for a while, then nodded heavily. Good. It's a rare opportunity, of course I agree. But won't Hawat have to go to New Flyer? It's so far from here. Winnie grabbed Company's arm and shook it. Brother-in-law, you don't need to worry about that. The academy will provide them with special accommodations, and Joshin and I will take care of him. There won't be a problem. If you miss him, we can send him back every year during the new year. Or you can just go and see him with my sister. It'll take less than 2 days to get to the main base of the Chamber of Commerce from here. It's very convenient. Company pondered for a moment and nodded. Well, I'll discuss it with your sister when she comes back. Okay, then let's put this matter aside for now, said Joshin. Brother-in-law, I'll be visiting Viscount Rithos tomorrow morning. Would you like to come with me? Company looked at Joshin blankly, thinking that the two of them were just discussing Hawat's arrangements. How did the topic suddenly jump to asking to see the mayor? The gap between them was a little too big, and it was fine if Joshin was going to see the mayor, but why did he have to drag him along? Chapter 989. Viscount Rithos looked at the card in his hand, his heart full of doubts. New Flyers Infrastructure Promotion Department? What the hell is this place? Viscount Rithos looked at the back of the card and saw the New Flyers emblem. He hesitated for a moment and asked the butler beside him, You said that there was a person who used to be a servant here? The butler nodded gently, Yes, Lord Viscount. This servant is called Company. He used to be very serious and dutiful when he was in the mansion, so I still have some impression of him. He's from our town, so I think there shouldn't be a problem. I see. Viscount Rithos looked at the card twice and waved his hand. Then invite them in. Yes. A moment later, Jothian and Company walked into the reception room of Viscount Rithos Manor on the outskirts of Arafat town under the guidance of the butler. When Company saw Viscount Rithos sitting on the main seat, he immediately bowed to him respectfully. Greetings, Lord Viscount. Jothian looked at Viscount Rithos with interest before bowing slightly. Greetings, Lord Viscount. Viscount Risos glanced at Company and immediately lost interest in looking at him. He turned his head and looked at Jothian from head to toe. Seeing that Jothian was dressed appropriately, had an elegant temperament, and had a confident smile on his face, Viscount Risos pointed to the guest seat next to him. Please take a seat. After Jothian sat down, Company hesitated for a moment before carefully sitting down next to the chair. But he kept his head down and looked at the ground, not daring to look up at Viscount Risos at all. In his mind, Viscount Risos was already a big shot. He never thought that he would be treated as a guest by the mayor one day. Seeing the two sit down, Viscount Risos pondered for a moment, raised the card in his hand and asked Jothian, "You claim to be the manager of the New Flyers Infrastructure Promotion Department. How come I've never heard of such a department in New Flyer?" Jothian smiled. Because this department was just established in August last year. It has only been running trial operations in the Principality of Constantine and the Lampari Kingdom. This year is the first time it has entered the Fok Kingdom. It's not strange that Lord Viscount has never heard of it before. Is that so? Risos looked at Jothian suspiciously. Then what is this? Infrastructure Promotion Department? What does it do? The name sounds really weird. Jothian took out a document from his bag and handed to Viscount Risos. The Infrastructure Promotion Department is mainly responsible for promoting the Promotion Department of Infrastructure Promotion of Promotion. I am one of the promotion managers in this department. I am currently in charge of the Drake Duchy and Fok Kingdom's promotion. Viscount Risos took the document and glanced at it. He frowned and asked, "Then what is this infrastructure promotion that you're talking about? Why is New Flyer promoting it?" Infrastructure promotion is a very broad topic. If it's broken down, it can be divided into transportation, energy supply, education, health, sports, and culture. If it's broken down further, it's, all right, stop breaking it down. Viscount Risos frowned and waved his hand. Say, why do I sound so confused about what you're saying? I can barely understand transportation. Isn't it the slogan that New Flyer and the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce have been using? What's it called? Oh, right, if you want to be rich, build roads first? Is that right? Yes. But transportation isn't just about building roads. It also includes river transportation and sea transportation. In addition, our Chamber of Commerce is currently researching railway transportation and air transportation that should be implemented in the future. And in order to ensure the smooth flow of transportation, the necessary maintenance and logistics must be resolved, so… Stop! Viscount Risos interrupted Jothian again. You've said so much. What does it have to do with you coming to find me? Jothian chuckled and pointed at the document that he had just handed to Viscount Risos. Lord Viscount, this is our department's cooperation plan for promoting infrastructure. Please take a look. Viscount Risos frowned and looked at him before seriously looking at the document in his hand. Although the document wasn't thick, it took Viscount Risos half an hour to finish reading it. After reading it, he pondered for a while before saying to Jothian, I have 2 questions. Please ask. The first question, based on this plan, your Frestek Chamber of Commerce will help your partner build various infrastructure. You will help them build roads, hospitals, and even schools. Who will pay for this? Even if it's just our small town, it will cost at least a few 100,000 gold coins to build all these things, right? Based on what you just said, your Frestek Chamber of Commerce isn't just making these things in our place. No matter how rich your Frestek Chamber of Commerce is, you can't deal with it, right? Viscount Risos asked in a doubtful voice. Lord Viscount, your concerns are very reasonable. Indeed, our Chamber of Commerce doesn't have the financial resources to pay for all the expenses. Do you want me to pay for it? Viscount Risos looked at Jothian with vigilance. Let me tell you, I might be the mayor and a viscount, but if you want me to take out a few 100,000 gold coins, that's too much. Of course I won't let Lord Viscount bear it alone. Jothian didn't find Viscount Riso's reaction strange at all. He had seen too many of these things when he was promoting in various places. In terms of funding, New Flyer will be responsible for part of it, and the rest will be raised through other means. In addition, your kingdom's parliament will also provide some financial support. As for you, Lord Viscount, you only need to provide some support when necessary. Viscount Risos was stunned. You're saying the kingdom's parliament will also pay? You've received approval from the kingdom's parliament? Yes. Jothian rummaged through his bag and took out another document for Viscount Risos. Viscount Riso's expression became serious when he saw the Fok Kingdom's parliament emblem on this document. He took the document from Jothian and read it carefully twice. After confirming that it wasn't fake, he couldn't help but glare at Jothian with dissatisfaction. Since this guy had an official document issued by the kingdom's parliament, why didn't he take it out immediately? He had been guessing for a long time. Cough. Since the kingdom's parliament has expressed their support, then of course I will follow their wishes. However, Viscount Risos purposely dragged out his words. Jothian, manager, what do you plan to do? According to what you said just now, if we want to transport something, we can. Energy supply, Jothian reminded softly. That's right, the energy supply, and that pile of things can't be done in just 1 or 2 days, right? There has to be a sequence, right? Of course. Jothian nodded with a smile. Lord Viscount, according to my inspection of Arafat Town in the past 2 days, I think, since Arafat Town now has a road connecting it, there's no need to rush in other aspects of infrastructure construction. The problem that needs to be solved first is actually mainly focused on education and training. Education and training. Viscount Risos looked at Jothian with confusion. What do you mean by education and training? It's very simple. Jothian pulled Company, who had been sitting next to him silently, over. Look, this is my wife's brother-in-law, Company. He has 2 children now. The older one is 10 years old this year, and the younger one is almost 6. However, they haven't been to school since they were young, nor have they received any education or professional training. Isn't that normal? Viscount Risos was puzzled. Company was obviously an ordinary civilian. How could he let his children receive private education? Not to mention that he didn't have that much money, he didn't have the qualifications at all. Receiving education was a right that only the nobles had. No, this isn't normal. Jothian straightened his face and shook his head solemnly for the first time. Viscount Risos, the value that a person who received education from a young age and a person who didn't receive the corresponding education can create when they grow up are completely different. If Arafat Town can develop better in the future, and the people's lives can become more prosperous, then increasing investment in education is the most necessary. Viscount Risos was confused by what he heard. Letting a few civilian children receive the so-called education and training can make Arafat Town develop better. Make people's lives more prosperous? It's not that exaggerated. Viscount Risos didn't hide his thoughts at all, so Jothian saw the suspicious look on his face and of course knew what he was thinking. However, he didn't intend to rely on words to persuade Viscount Risos. The purpose of this visit was only to get his approval. Sir Viscount, perhaps you can't understand the meaning of this matter now, but I believe you will in the future. In addition, our Chamber of Commerce has officially reached an agreement with the Fok Kingdom's Parliament on infrastructure and promotion. Now, after my inspection, I've decided to make Arafat Town the first pilot of our Chamber of Commerce's plan in the Fok Kingdom. I hope you, as the mayor of Arafat Town, can give enough support to this plan. Viscount Risos looked at the document signed by the Fok Kingdom's Parliament, pondered for a moment, and nodded helplessly. Okay, I'll talk to you in detail after I send an official document to the Parliament for consultation. Okay. Jothian got up with a smile. Then, Sir Viscount, I'll visit again in half a month, and we'll talk in detail then. Chapter 990. After leaving Viscount Riso's private manor, Company couldn't help pulling on Josias. Don't you have the approval from the kingdom's parliament? Why do you insist that I come with you to see the mayor? Company complained. Company had a bit of a look in his eyes. I was so nervous that I almost couldn't hold it in. Couldn't hold it in? Josias was a bit surprised before looking at Company's lower body and pursing his lips into a smile. Brother-in-law, you'll have many chances to meet Viscount Risos in the future, so it's better to get used to talking to him on equal terms like today. Ah? Why? Company was surprised. Come, brother-in-law, let's change places to talk. Josias invited Company into the magic sedan that brought him here, stopping by a river not far from Viscount Riso's private manor. After getting out of the car, Johann took out a paper box from his bosom. He opened the paper box and took out a long white object that was as long as a finger. It was also wrapped in a thin paper and handed it to Company. What is this? Company took it curiously and smelled a fragrant smell coming from it, making him feel refreshed in an instant. This is the elven race's new hermit tobacco cigarette. Don't you think it smells good? Come, it's like this. Jothian gestured for Company to put the thinner end of the cigarette in his mouth. He then took out a small metal box from his pocket and touched one end of the metal box. A small flame appeared on top of the metal box. Then he placed the flame on the other end of the hermit tobacco cigarette, and under the flame, the end of the hermit tobacco cigarette was slightly burnt. With the sparks that came out of it, the refreshing fragrance that he smelled just now became very strong. Company just took a sniff and he felt refreshed. Josias also took out a cigarette and took a deep breath before letting out a long breath. His face was filled with comfort as he signaled to Company, "Try taking a puff." Company looked at the thing in his mouth, and after thinking for a bit, he tried taking a puff. He felt a cool breath enter his mouth and enter his throat. Coo. Company was caught off guard and immediately choked, coughing loudly. Josias laughed and patted Company's back to help him ease his breathing. Brother-in-law, this thing can't be rushed. Take it slow. After coughing for a while, Company finally recovered. He looked at the herbaceous Hanru cigarette in his hand and took a light puff. This time, because he was mentally prepared, the cool aura did not rush into his trachea all of a sudden. Instead, it seeped in bit by bit. Then, he felt the cool aura seeping out of his trachea and permeating every part of his body, making him feel relaxed. This is good stuff. Company couldn't help but exclaim in amazement. Josh Ion, this must be expensive, right? It's not too expensive. There are 20 of them in a pack, and I'm selling them at a wholesale price of 30 silver coins per pack. 30 silver coins. Company was shocked. He couldn't help coughing again as he was hit by the aura. Cough. This expensive? Based on what he said? Then wouldn't this one be? 30 silver coins per pack, 20. 1. It's only 1.5 silver coins, it's still alright. Josias said with a smile. 1.5 silver coins per pack. Company seriously looked at the herbaceous Hanru cigarette in his hand for a while, before turning to look at the magic sedan behind them. After thinking for a bit, he suddenly took out the half-burnt herbaceous Hanru cigarette and threw it on the ground, stomping it out with his foot. Seeing his actions, Josias couldn't help being surprised. Brother-in-law, what are you doing? This is a good thing, it's hard to buy it even if you have money. I know it's a good thing, but... Company shook his head and took a deep breath, calming himself down. This thing is too good, I'm afraid that I won't be able to stop myself from wanting more after smoking one. This thing is too expensive, I can't enjoy it. Josias looked over Company in surprise before patting Company's shoulder. He pointed at the river and said, "Come, brother-in-law, let's sit over there and talk." Company was a bit surprised, but he sat down by the river with Josias. Josias was silent for a bit before saying, "Brother-in-law, do you know why I came this time?" Company revealed a smile. "I know, you came this time mainly for the matter you mentioned to the Lord Mayor, right? Although I don't understand, I know that this is a big matter. Compared to this, coming back to visit family is just a matter of convenience." It's not bad to say it like this, but if it wasn't for Winnie, I wouldn't have taken this town as my first target, so it can't be considered a matter of convenience. Josias paused before pointing at the magic sedan parked on the side of the road. "Brother-in-law, do you want a magic sedan?" Company was stunned. "Magic sedan? No, 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 this thing costs over 1,000 gold coins, right? How could I afford it?" "You can't afford it now, but that doesn't mean you can't afford it in the future. Brother-in-law, are you willing to stay in that factory as a normal worker?" Josias asked. Company was silent for a bit before giving a bitter laugh. "I'm not willing, but what can I do? I can't even recognize a few words and I can't get a high-level worker's certificate, so what if I don't work as a normal worker? That's why I brought up the idea of establishing a school when I talked to Viscount Rissos about the promotion of infrastructure." Joshua turned to look in the southwest direction with a hint of admiration in his eyes. Josias had a look of admiration in his eyes as he revealed a look of admiration. "Sir Chairman has already proposed this idea 10 years ago, but we dumb people have only realized the meaning of these words in the past 2 years. Company was a little surprised. He thought that even when facing the mayor, Joshin was still very indifferent, and there was even a hint of arrogance. It could be seen that he was an extremely proud person. However, when he talked about the president now, he didn't hide his admiration for him at all. Your new Flyers chairman is called Sue, right? He's a very amazing person?" "Of course," Joshian replied with certainty. "Sir Chairman is the most amazing person I've ever seen in my life. There's no one like him. Don't tell me you don't even know about the fall of Archmage Levin and Soker 5 years ago, brother-in-law?" "I've heard about it," Company hurriedly explained. "But I only heard that Archmage Levin and Soker was killed when he attacked your new flyer, but I don't know the specifics. I'm not too sure about the details either. But think about it, Sir Chairman was only a great mage at that time, yet he was able to lead the subordinates of the Chamber of Commerce to kill an archmage. Isn't that amazing enough? And it's because of this that the entire continent's understanding of mages has changed. The magic machine industry has been able to develop so quickly in the continent these past few years because of this. Otherwise..." "Oh." Company nodded blankly. He was only an ordinary citizen of the Fok Kingdom who had never left the small town of Arafat, so he didn't know much about the outside world. Now that he heard Joshuan's excitement, he really couldn't empathize with him. After Joshuan spoke for a while, he finally realized this point. He coughed lightly and didn't continue. In short, Sir Chairman is very amazing, there's no doubt about that. The Infrastructure Promotion Department I'm working in was established by Sir Chairman himself 2 years ago. At first, many people didn't understand, but after a trial run in the Principality of Constantine and the Lampari Kingdom, everyone understood the importance of the work I'm doing now. I have to say, Sir Chairman really has great foresight." Company still had a blank expression. Joshuan could only helplessly stop. After thinking for a while, he said, "All right, let's not talk about Sir Chairman. Brother-in-law, you just said that because you haven't received any education, it's very difficult for you to get a high-skilled certificate, right?" Company nodded. "Then do you want Hawat and Say to be like you in the future?" "Of course not." Company immediately shook his head. "But it's already troublesome enough for you and Winnie to bring Halva to school, as for Say. If it's just the 2 of them, there's no problem." But my goal isn't just the two of them, rather it's all the children in Arafat Town. If they can receive proper education when they grow up, they will become very useful talent. So my first goal is to build a school in this town, letting all the children receive an education. Is it the education and training you mentioned to Sir Mayor just now? Primary education is just a part of the foundation of education and training. Of course, everything has to start from the primary level, so your understanding isn't wrong. Then, is this related to me? Company pointed at himself and asked. Of course. Joshua smiled and patted Company's shoulder. Company looked at Company with a smile. Brother-in-law, you also want to buy a magic sedan, right? You also want to be able to enjoy herbaceous cigarettes every day, right? You also want Big Sister and the children to have better lives, right? As long as you listen to my arrangements, these won't be a problem. Company scratched his head in puzzlement. What exactly do you want me to do? It's very simple. Our Chamber of Commerce is about to invest in building a primary school in Arafat Town, and you will be responsible for being the dean of this school. Huh? Company stared at Joshua with wide eyes. Are you kidding me? Chapter 991. 2 days later, a magic sedan quickly left Arafat Town. Winnie came back out the window and turned back to watch her big sister and brother-in-law gradually disappearing into the distance, as a trace of unwillingness appeared in her eyes. After being in a daze for a bit, she turned back to look at Hawat sitting beside her. She found that although there was a trace of unwillingness and fear in his eyes, there was more excitement and anticipation. Winnie couldn't help smiling. She reached out to pat Hawat's head and asked in a gentle voice, Hawat, you've grown this big, but this should be your first time being this far from home, right? Hawat thought about it before giving a strong nod. He replied in a loud voice, the furthest I went before was to Moro City with my father. Moro City? That place is only 30 kilometers away from your home. But this time you're following us to a place that's over 1,000 kilometers away. Are you afraid? Winnie asked. Hawat thought for a bit before shaking his head. I'm not afraid. With little Aunt watching over me, I'm not afraid. Winnie laughed before patting his head. She took out some prepared sweets from her bag and gave them to Hawat. Seeing that he was happy eating them, she looked at the front of the magic sedan and said in a worried voice to Yothian, who was driving, I've thought about it and I feel that it isn't reliable for brother-in-law to be the principal of this elementary school. Yothian looked forward and didn't turn back. You also know brother-in-law. He doesn't know many words at all. Now that you're letting him be the principal of a school that teaches children how to read, this doesn't seem right, right? Moreover, brother-in-law is an honest person. It's fine for him to do some simple work. To suddenly have him be the principal of a school. I'm afraid that he won't be able to do it. Don't worry. This job isn't as difficult as you think, Joshua replied with a smile. Yothian replied with a smile, when we really need to establish this elementary school, we will send out professionals. From the construction of the school to its operation, as well as the most important teaching, brother-in-law doesn't need to personally participate. In fact, the only reason I chose him to be the dean is because the dean of this academy must be a local. The rest is not important. But I'm worried. I'm worried that my brother-in-law doesn't know anything and will be deceived by the nobles and merchants in town. In the end, the academy won't be able to run well. Winnie was still worried. You don't have to worry about that. Our Frestec Chamber of Commerce being able to choose Arafat Town as the first test of our basic construction plan is Arafat Town's luck. I believe both Viscount Risus and the Frankish Kingdom's Parliament are well aware of this. Therefore, they will definitely support this matter and ensure that it goes smoothly. You don't have to worry about anyone deceiving brother-in-law. Winnie thought for a while and couldn't help but nod slightly. She felt that what Jojen said was very reasonable. Ever since Archmage Levin Hasek died in New Flyer 5 years ago, New Flyer's position in the signs had undergone a huge change. If it was said that the Frestek Chamber of Commerce wanted to cooperate with the various countries of the continent before, in the past 5 years, all the countries of the continent were trying to outdo each other, trying to find a chance to cooperate with the Frestek Chamber of Commerce. Although the Fok Kingdom could be considered a very powerful kingdom, they still welcomed the cooperation opportunities offered by New Flyer. Although the Frestek Chamber of Commerce's infrastructure department represented by Josias couldn't be considered a direct production department of the Frestek Chamber of Commerce, because when the Frestek Chamber of Commerce evaluated the magic machine industry of their partners, they considered infrastructure as a very important project. Moreover, the proportion was very high, so there were many countries that placed importance on this. Now that Josian had come to the Fok Kingdom on behalf of the New Flyers Infrastructure Promotion Department, hoping to promote the Fok Kingdom's infrastructure, it was equivalent to giving the Fok Kingdom an excellent opportunity. That was why the Fok Kingdom's Royal Council attached so much importance to this. They even gave Jothian a document with extremely high authority, allowing him to conduct inspections in the Fok Kingdom as he wished. He could also choose an ideal pilot project to conduct an experiment in infrastructure construction. The reason why Josian chose Alfate Town as his first step was naturally because of Winnie. But in fact, Alfate Town's current situation was indeed suitable for a pilot site. This town already had a road connecting it, and a magic machine factory had been established here for a few years. This allowed the people in the town to have a certain understanding of magic machines and related new things, and there was no need for Josian to popularize it from scratch. In addition, the existence of that magic machine factory allowed Alfate Town to have a certain economic foundation, and the ability to continue promoting and expanding the infrastructure. In addition, this town was located near the center of the Fok Kingdom, which made it a very suitable target for a pilot site. The reason why Josian chose Company to be the principal of the academy was because this academy needed a local to be the principal. Compared to inviting the nobles with a certain reputation in the town to be the principal, Josian trusted Company more because he was one of his own. Since this academy was the first pilot site, Josian needed the person in charge here to be connected to the town and maintain a smooth relationship with him. With the combination of these two requirements, Company became the most suitable middleman. Although Company was indeed, as Winnie had feared, lacking in education and knowledge, and thus lacking in handling many things, Company was not a fool. Furthermore, Johann could tell from Company's reaction to Company's refusal that he was an extremely principled and clear-headed person. He was very suitable for this job. As for the operation of the academy, Josian wasn't worried at all. Because in these 2 years, the New Flyers Promotion Department had been promoting infrastructure in the Principality of Constantine and the Lampari Kingdom, so there were quite a few talents in establishing the academy. Josian had also accumulated a lot of experience, so there wouldn't be any problems at all. Company's role as the principal was more symbolic than practical, so there wasn't much work he needed to do. Moreover, like this, Company's fame in Alfate Town would increase and his income would increase. It could be considered perfectly solving Winnie's request for him to help her big sister's family. Thinking of this, Josian couldn't help feeling a bit proud. Solving a problem with both public and private matters, that really was hard to come by. Josian's group didn't directly leave the Fok Kingdom, rather they drove the magic sedan for around 3 hours before arriving at the Fok Kingdom's capital, Flantis City, that was around 200 kilometers away from Alfate Town. Although Alfate Town had been reported to the mayor of Alfate Town, Viscount Ressos, they still had to go through the official process. So Josian had to come here to report this to the Fok Kingdom's parliament first. After receiving the support of the parliament, it would save a lot of time to establish the academy in Alfate Town. When they were around 4 to 5 kilometers away from Flantis City, Josian saw a very familiar tall spire in the sky in front of them. Just as the spire came into view, a crisp cry suddenly sounded from Joshua's body. Hawat, who had fallen asleep on the road, jumped up when he heard the noise. His head hit the roof of the car with a loud bang, causing him to grimace in pain. "Be careful!" Winnie glared at him before pulling him back into his seat. Then she spread her hand and took out a small magic communicator from Joshua's right pocket before pressing the button. "Hey Joshu, Winnie, you're already here?" There was a clear female voice that came from the magic communicator. Taylor, we're already here. Where are you now?" Winnie immediately asked back with a smile. "We're still assembling the fourth magic signal tower. Look to the right, you should be able to see us." Winnie poked her head out the window and looked to the right of the magic sedan. As expected, she could see a thin spire in the distant horizon. The magic signal towers around Flantis City were the cooperation between the New Flyer and the Fok Kingdom, the first step of building a magic signal communication network in the Fok Kingdom. If this magic signal tower was finished, the first step of the mission would be complete. The magic signal could cover all of Flantis City, as well as a range of 8 kilometers outside of Flantis City. Anyone who entered the range of this magic signal could use the magic communicator to communicate without any hindrance. "Since we can talk, doesn't that mean that the magic signal tower has been built?" Winnie asked the magic communicator. There's just one last step to check. Where's Joshu?" "He's driving, what's wrong?" "Give him the magic communicator, I have something to tell him." Winnie gave an O sound before giving the magic communicator and putting it beside Joshu's ear. "Hey, Taylor, what do you have to tell me? Are you and Winnie going back today or tomorrow?" I want to go back as soon as possible, but I have to report to the Fok Kingdom's parliament first. So if nothing unexpected happens, we should be leaving tomorrow." "What? Then?" Taylor on the other side seemed a bit hesitant. After a pause, he continued, "Is it convenient for you to help me bring someone back? It's someone who wants to hitch a ride, is that all right?" Joshu slightly knit his brows and turned to look at Winnie. Seeing that she also knit her brows, she made a hand gesture for him to ask again. "Who?" Joshu asked in a knowing voice. "A magician, he wants to join our company." "Then why don't you tell him how to take the ride and let him go himself? Right now it's only 2 trips from the Drake Duchy and Lampari Kingdom to our company's main base. It's not that troublesome." "Hey Joshu, you don't want to bring him? Just tell me if you don't want to, I'll find someone else." Joshu wanted to say that he didn't want to bring him, but he immediately changed his words. "I just feel it's very strange. There are so many magicians who come to our company and most of them come by themselves, so why does he want me to bring him? He has a personal relationship with the project manager we're working with here, and he's never been out before, so he doesn't know the way, so he asked me to think of a way. Joshu, just treat it as helping me, alright? I'll treat you and Winnie to dinner when we go back." Joshu helplessly turned to Winnie. Winnie rolled her eyes and then nodded slightly. Jonathan heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing Winnie's reaction. "Alright, I'll go to the parliament first, and then I'll go to your engineering department tomorrow. Tell him to wait there." "Okay, see you tomorrow." Chapter 992. At 9 o'clock the next morning, Jothian drove his magic sedan to the temporary base the New Flyers Promotion Department had set up near the east gate of Flantis City and met Taylor as promised. When he got out of the car, he saw a middle-aged man who looked to be around 40 years old standing beside Taylor. He was wearing a black magic robe, with dark skin and a bit of a daze around him. "Let me introduce you, Magician Sodak. These 2 are the colleagues I mentioned to you yesterday. This is Jothian and this is Winnie. This is—" Taylor's doubtful eyes fell onto Hawat. "This is my nephew," Winnie explained. Winnie explained, "Come, Hawat, call Aunt Taylor." "Hello, Auntie Taylor." Hawat immediately greeted her obediently. "Call me Big Sister, I'm not that old." Taylor revealed a smile and reached out to pinch Hawat's face before turning to Jothian. Jothian, this is the magician Sodak I told you about yesterday. He wants to hitch a ride with you to the company. Jothian reached his hand out to Sodak with a faint smile. Hello, magician Sodak. I heard from Taylor that you want to join our new flyer, so I'm here to welcome you on behalf of the company. Sodak was a traditional magician who wasn't good at communicating, so he just reached out his hand to shake Jothian's hand before taking it back. He forced out a smile and said with a nod, I don't know if I can catch the eye of your company. Jothian looked at Sodak's chest and found that there was a third-grade magician badge on his chest, so he couldn't help knitting his brows. Based on his appearance, Sodak was at least 40 years old. Some people would even believe that he was 50 years old. But he was only a trivial third-grade magician at his age, which was enough to prove that his talent for magic wasn't outstanding at all. Normally speaking, he wasn't qualified to enter the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce with his level. But if he was just a normal magic array technician, it shouldn't be a problem. But everyone knew that entering the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce was much better than being a normal technician. So even if Jothian didn't like Sodak's prospects, he wouldn't say that it was impossible for him to join the company's Academy of Magic. So he just said with a smile, Relax, our company welcomes all magicians who are interested in joining the magic machine industry. I think that magician Sodak will be able to find a place in the company's way. Taylor on the side was A's way. He said to Winnie, Since yours A's way, I'll treat you to lunch before leaving. Is it? Winnie shook her head. I'm afraid that won't do. It would take more than 10 hours to get back to the main base of the Chamber of Commerce. Clock is it? Why are you in such a rush? You can rest in Anvil City for a night before leaving. It'll save you from being too tired on the way. Then again, I remember that Wynn didn't have a driver's license yet, right? Jothian can only drive alone on this trip, and he can rest for a night to avoid being too tired. Taylor said in a doubtful voice. It's fine, I'm used to it. Jothian shook his head. I've been driving around like this for the past 2 years. It's normal to drive for over 10 hours at a time. It's nothing. Taylor looked at him and couldn't help shaking his head. In order to promote infrastructure, you really have been running all over the place. It's been quite hard on you. But there are also benefits. Look, if it wasn't for your work, how could the company give you the newest high-class magic sedan? This car costs 2,300 gold coins. If you bought it yourself, it would take you several years to afford it. Several years? I wouldn't be able to afford it even after several years. Jothian shook his head with a smile. All right, let's not talk about this. Taylor and I are in a rush to set off. Magician Sodak, have you prepared all your luggage? Sodak raised the bag in his hand. It's just these things. I prepared them yesterday. All right, put them in the trunk and then we'll get in the car. Jothian helped Sodak put his simple luggage in the trunk of the magic car before letting him sit in the front seat. Then he waved goodbye to Taylor with Wynn. After the magic sedan started, it didn't take long for them to leave Flantis City, quickly heading southwest. It seemed like it was Sodak's first time riding in a magic sedan, so when the car started, he sat in his seat with a nervous look, not daring to move at all. When the magic sedan left Flantis City, he finally relaxed a bit. He curiously looked at the decorations of the magic sedan, asking Jothian a few questions from time to time. Jothian had been driving this magic sedan for 2 years, so his driving skills had already reached perfection. The road after leaving Flantis City wasn't as dense as the roads in the Lampari Kingdom and the Principality of Constantine, so it was very smooth. He kept speeding up, almost driving the magic sedan as fast as it could go. Sodak saw the scenery on both sides of the road quickly passing by, and he became a bit nervous. Although it was Hawat's first time riding in a magic sedan, He became more and more excited as the speed kept increasing. He looked at the scenery outside the window with wide eyes and kept shouting. In just around an hour, the magic sedan was already 100 kilometers away from Flantis City. When the magic sedan entered a forest, Zodak's face in the passenger seat suddenly became very pale and he covered his mouth with his hand. Jothian drove while paying attention to his situation. Now that he saw his appearance, he immediately understood. This magician Sodak really was riding in a magic sedan for the first time, and he found that he was carsick. Jothian slowly slowed the magic sedan and stopped by the side of the road. Sodak didn't say another word as he opened the door and charged into the forest. He held a tree trunk with one hand and lowered his head to vomit. Hawat looked at Sodak in the distance in surprise before asking Winnie, "Aunt, what's wrong with him?" "It's nothing. He's just carsick and wants to vomit." "Then why don't I get carsick?" "Because everyone is different. Some people get carsick and some people don't. Moreover, you're a child, so your body is better," Winnie explained. Hawat gave an "oh" sound before looking a bit proud. He even raised his little arm in front of Winnie with a proud look. Jothian saw that Sodak wouldn't be back for a while, so he opened the door and got out. When he came to the side of the road, he took out a cigarette from his chest and lit it. After a while, seeing that Sodak had basically stopped vomiting, he took out a bottle of warm water and a pill that he had prepared beforehand from the car and walked over. "Here, Magician Sodak, this is a pill that can alleviate carsick. First rinse your mouth and then take the pill. You'll feel much better." Sodak turned his head and looked at the water and pill in Jothian's hand with a weak look. He didn't even have the strength to show a doubtful look as he took the water and rinsed his mouth before swallowing the pill and letting out a long sigh. Joshian was just about to say something when he suddenly heard a rumbling sound from Sodak's stomach. He was stunned. Sodak revealed an awkward smile to Jothian before pointing into the forest. Jothian could only barely hold back his smile as he gave a nod to Sodak. "Go, we'll wait for you." Sodak immediately ran into the forest like he was running for his life. After a while, he had already disappeared into the dense forest, and there was no trace of him. Joshian looked at the direction where Link had disappeared with a strange expression. He then took out a similar pill from his pocket and looked around. He could not help but mumble, "Strange, does the motion sickness medicine that the elves made have a side effect of diarrhea after taking it? I have to tell the Nightsong tribe about this when I get back." In order to avoid being embarrassed, Sodak ran far away, so Jothian couldn't hear anything. Of course, he wasn't interested in hearing other people having diarrhea. He turned to the side of the magic sedan and took out some food from the trunk, giving one each to Winnie and Hawat. "It seems like we still need to wait a bit, so we might as well take care of lunch now." Winnie doubtfully took it and asked, "Didn't we say that we would have lunch in Philios City at noon?" Jothian gave a shrug. "Something happened to our guest. I think that not to mention lunch, he won't be able to eat anything today." "What's wrong with him?" Winnie knit her brows as she looked into the forest, but she couldn't see Sodak at all. When she wanted to ask, there was a rustling sound that came from the other side of the forest. After a while, around 20 people holding various weapons came out of the forest, instantly surrounding the magic sedan. The leading large man looked at the magic sedan and Jothian standing beside it before looking at Hawat and Winnie in the car. He gave a fierce laugh and raised the giant blade in his hand as he loudly said, "Hey, you two, be obedient if you don't want to die." Jothian and Winnie looked at each other in surprise. Had they met bandits? Chapter 993. "Hey, the two of you and that kid, get out of the magic sedan for me." The burly man was still brandishing his long saber as he shouted. At the same time, he led the other 20 or so men to approach. However, Apart from Hawat's nervous and fearful expression, Joshua and Winnie didn't seem to be nervous at all. Instead, they both laughed. "Hey Winnie, have you met bandits before?" Josian asked Winnie in a calm voice. Winnie looked at the 20 or so burly men who were approaching them with interest and shook her head. "You think that bandits would dare to rob me?" Josian laughed. "That's right. All right, Winnie, I'll leave these fellows to you. Hawat, come and hide on the side with me. Let's watch your little aunt show off her might." Winnie glared at Josian. "What do you mean show off her might? You make it sound like I'm very fierce." She patted Hawat's head after saying this and said in a gentle voice, "Be good and wait on the side with Uncle. Watch me take care of these fellows who don't know life from death." Hawat nodded and obediently followed Josian to the side of the road. His eyes were wide open as he looked at Winnie with a look of curiosity and excitement. When he was at home before, he had vaguely heard his mother mention that this little aunt who was especially good to him seemed to have an incredible identity. Seeing Josian and Hawat hide on the side, Winnie turned to look at the 20 bandits walking over. Her lips curled and she revealed a dangerous smile as she waved her hand. "Hoo!" Several fireballs the size of a human head appeared around Winnie and flew towards the bandits. Pung, 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 pung. Half of the fireballs fell to the ground and created a large explosion. The other half hit some bandits and sent them flying, while also setting them on fire. The bandits that were set on fire gave heart-rending pitiful cries as they wildly rolled on the ground. The bandits that were still intact scattered in all directions, looking at Winnie with eyes of terror. "Magician! She's actually a magician!" Winnie looked at the bandits in disdain and said with a cold snort, "Just based on you fellows, you want to rob a magician? You're simply seeking death." After saying that, Winnie waved her hand again, and several fireballs flew towards the pirates on the opposite side. As a third-grade researcher at the Magic Research Institute of the New Flying Chamber of Commerce, Winnie was already a fourth-grade magician before she came to the New Flyer. In the 5 years since she came to the New Flyer, she had increased her magic level from 4th grade to 6th grade. Not to mention these bandits that didn't know magic, even if it was just a normal bandit, she wouldn't even place. However, when the fireballs she threw out flew in front of the bandits, the bandit leader and 3 other bandits suddenly wiped their bodies, and 3 magic shields that shone with a light blue light suddenly appeared in front of them. The fireballs that Winnie threw out smashed into these magic shields, and only caused a small ripple on the shields before they disappeared. They didn't cause any damage to the bandits at all. Winnie was stunned and her eyes narrowed. "A single water magic shield? How did you get this?" The bandit leader laughed. "Little girl, don't think that you're so great just because you're a magician. I now have the New Flyer's latest military magic machine in my hands. It's a piece of cake to deal with a mere low-grade magician like you." Winnie ignored him and turned to exchange a look with Josian, who had an equally shocked expression. Josian shook his head slightly, indicating that he didn't have any clue either. Winnie waved her hand to him, indicating that he should take Hawat further away, and then she turned again, and looked at the robbers with a grave expression. Although she wasn't a researcher of the New Flyer's military magic machine department, she was a researcher of the Academy of Magic. Of course, she had a deeper understanding of the various military magic machines developed by New Flyer compared to ordinary people. The device that the bandit leader and his 3 subordinates had that could activate the light blue water magic shield was one of the individual magic shields that New Flyer had developed 3 years ago. It used a magic shield made up of water magic elements and had a special effect against fire magic. That was why the level 4 spell fireball that she cast didn't have any effect on the shield. There was no doubt about that. What puzzled Winnie was that the bandits looked like a group of ordinary bandits. Why did they have such a device? Although New Flyer had developed this device 3 years ago, it wasn't until last year that it was officially announced and sold to the public. So far, only the Lampari Kingdom, the Kingdom of Ruhr, the 2 empires, and 4 other countries that had reached level 3 in the new Flyers' strategic partner evaluation were allowed to purchase these devices. Even the regular armies of many countries on the continent couldn't be equipped with these devices, let alone ordinary bandits. How did these bandits get their hands on them? Moreover, what they had was the most outstanding defensive device, especially against fire magic. It was said to be the best at limiting the lethality of enemy magicians. That was even more strange. You don't have to know where we got it from. Little girl, you just have to obediently let us capture you. If you cooperate, I can still spare your lives. Otherwise, don't blame us for being merciless. The bandit leader shouted loudly. Winnie narrowed her eyes slightly, feeling that something was wrong. Bandits that could even get their hands on such high-end military magic machines couldn't be ordinary bandit. These people might not be here just for robbery, but for something else. But why did they come for him and Joshin? Could it be that they were here for Sodak? Winnie immediately rejected that guess. If they were here for Sodak, it was impossible that they hadn't asked about Sodak's whereabouts until now. It was as if they didn't know that Sodak was in their car. Then what were they here for? While Winnie was still frowning in thought, the bandit leader and his 3 subordinates had already raised their magic shields and approached them step by step. Winnie, be careful. They have other military magic machines on them. Joshin's voice suddenly sounded from behind. Winnie's heart skipped a beat, and she couldn't help but take a step back. Ever since New Flyer was attacked by 2 magisters 5 years ago, which led to the destruction of Shinfei's first steel mill, and a great loss of manpower and economy, the President ordered the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce and the Military Magic Machine Research Institute to deepen their research on defense against Magi's attacks. After 5 years of research and development, New Flyer's research on military magic machines had made great progress, and their defense against Magi's attacks had reached a level that could almost be described as insane. Among the newly developed military magic machines in the past few years, there were as many as 2 major types and 17 types that could defend against Magi's attack. The magic shields in the hands of the 4 bandits were one of those types. If that was all they had, Winnie wouldn't be afraid. However, if they had other types of military magic machines that specifically targeted Magi, then Winnie might have no problem protecting herself, but it would be hard to say if she wanted to protect Joshin and Hawat at the same time. Thinking of this, Winnie no longer hesitated. The magic in her body was fully mobilized, and a row of fire walls suddenly ignited in front of her, rushing towards the pirates opposite her. The bandit leader and the other 3 bandits continued to maintain their magic shields in front of them. When the fire walls crashed into them, they were completely neutralized by the magic shields, and did not pose any threat to them. However, they could only protect themselves. Where the magic shields did not protect, the fire walls burned all the way through without any hindrance, and the remaining bandits were chased away in all directions. After driving away the rest of the bandits, Winnie focused her attention on the remaining 4 bandits in front of her, and a large amount of data that she had encountered flashed through her mind. According to the data released by New Flyer's Military Magic Machine Research Institute, the magic shields of a single soldier could theoretically withstand an instantaneous magic attack's damage limit of about 3,000 cal. This was even equivalent to the damage limit of a 9th-level area spell. In terms of single-target spells, a normal 6th-level or 7th-level single-target spell's damage limit was also about this range, depending on the magician's level. Winnie was currently at the level of a 6th-level magician, and could be considered a very outstanding 6th-level magician, so her magic power was not bad. However, this also meant that she could only cast a 6th-level spell at most, and even the highest magic damage could not exceed the damage limit of a single soldier's magic shield. This meant that she could not rely on magic alone to break the shield and directly kill these 4 bandits. However, this did not mean that she did not have a way to deal with it. After all, magic shields were inanimate objects, and it ultimately depended on how the person used them. These 4 bandits should have not been in possession of these devices for long, so it was obvious that they did not know how to fully utilize these devices. After Winnie calmed herself down, she took a small step back, and then stomped her right foot on the ground. Boom! A pillar of fire suddenly rose from the feet of one of the bandits into the sky. That bandit was instantly enveloped by the pillar of fire, and he let out an incomparably miserable howl. Then, he became a man on fire and ran wildly into the forest. Looking at the shocked expression on the bandit leader and the other 2 bandits' faces, Winnie let out a cold laugh in her heart. "You don't even have a mana detector, and you dare to attack a mage? Do you really think that you are invincible just because you have military magic machines?" Chapter 994. Winnie waited patiently for a moment. When she saw that the remaining 3 bandits did not take out more military magic machines or other related equipment, she was relieved and prepared to get rid of them. Of course, she could not kill them all. They were just a few bandits, but they were able to have the most advanced military magic machines in their hands. Their background was definitely not simple. Even if they didn't care about this, just investigating how the 4 individual magic shields fell into the hands of the 4 bandits was a very important matter. As a researcher of the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's magic research facility, Winnie couldn't avoid this. But just as Winnie was about to attack again, she suddenly heard a muffled sound above her head. "Humph! What a waste of time to pin my hopes on trash like you." Along with the sound of the voice, there was an abnormal surge of magical energy above her head. Winnie was shocked and flew back without hesitation. The intensity of the magical energy made her instantly determine that it was at least caused by an 8th-level spell, or even a higher-level spell. It was far beyond the level that she could deal with now. However, her flying speed was not as fast as the casting speed of the spell. She had just flown back for a short distance when she felt an unusually strong light in front of her. In a flash, Winnie had already determined that it should be an advanced wind-type spell, the 8th-level electric spell, Electric Blade. This spell was one of the most powerful single-target spells, even among the 8th-level spells. With Winnie's ability as a 6th-level mage, even if she could take it head-on, she would definitely be severely injured. But the speed of this spell was so fast that she could not dodge it at all. In a moment of desperation, Winnie seeped a trace of magical energy into her body and quietly activated a device that she had always kept close to her body. A light blue screen suddenly burst out from Winnie's body and instantly enveloped her whole body. The sudden sharp lightning hit the light blue screen and caused ripples on the light screen, but it could only shake the light screen and did not penetrate the light screen. Naturally, it could not cause any harm to Winnie. If one looked closely, they would find that the light blue screen that enveloped Winnie was somewhat similar to the light blue water magic shield that was cast by the individual magic shields of the 4 bandits, but it looked thicker and had a much better defensive effect. That was why it could withstand the attack of an 8th-level spell. This device that Winnie had always kept close to her body belonged to the same category as the individual magic shields, but it was a magic shield amplification device that was specially designed for mages. Compared to the individual magic shields that could be easily used by ordinary people, this magic shield amplification device could be activated by a mage's magical energy to cast a magic shield. In terms of flexibility, it was much better than the individual magic shields. In addition, because it was supported by the mage's own magical energy, the strength of the magic shield cast by the magic shield amplification device would be increased according to the mage's own magical level. In simple terms, it was actually equivalent to combining the strength of the mage with the device to increase the level of the magic shield that the mage could cast. Otherwise, with Winnie's own magical level as a 6th-level mage, she would not be able to withstand the attack of an 8th-level spell. The only regret was that Winnie was good at fire magic, but the magic shield amplification device on her body could only greatly strengthen the water magic shield. Otherwise, the magic shield that she cast now would be able to withstand the attack of an 8th level spell, or even a 9th level spell. After confirming that she had finally blocked the enemy's magic attack, Winnie breathed a sigh of relief and focused on the front. However, just as she calmed down, her heart trembled violently again. On the side of the road, Jothian and Hawat, who had been hiding and watching her kill the bandits, were now firmly restrained by a few fully armed men who had appeared out of nowhere. 2 sharp blades were placed on their necks, and even their breathing had become very careful. "Let them go!" Winnie roared angrily and was about to rush over. However, just as she moved, another bolt of lightning shot towards her. She had no choice but to activate her magic shield again to block this bolt of lightning. "Winnie Spinoza, if I were you, I would choose to stay put at this time. Otherwise, no one can guarantee that your husband and little nephew will be unharmed." A sinister voice came from the side. Winnie was stunned and looked in the direction of the voice. A middle-aged man in ordinary clothes and an ordinary face, who looked no different from a passerby, was floating in the air in front of her, looking at her with a smile. "How do you know my name?" Winnie asked with a frown. Not only did this man know her name, but he also knew that Jothian was her husband. More importantly, he even knew that Hawat was her nephew. This was enough to prove that the man had come prepared, and this time, he had specially set up an ambush for the 3 of them. "You don't need to know that." The middle-aged man, who looked ordinary, but his magical level was at least that of an 8th level mage, shook his head gently. "The only thing you need to do now is to listen to us obediently and come with us. Don't worry, you and your husband Jothian are still useful. We won't take your lives. Of course, if you don't listen, I can't guarantee the life of your little nephew." Winnie took a deep breath when she heard this blatant threat. She turned to look at Jothian, who had a sharp blade against his neck. Although Jothian's vital part was under the blade, his face was only slightly pale, and there was not much fear on his face. When he saw Winnie looking at him, he calmly said, "Winnie, listen to them. We don't have the ability to resist now." Winnie was silent for a moment. She looked at Hawat, who was crying out of fear but was trying his best not to cry out loud. After thinking for a moment, she removed the magic shield that covered her body and floated to the ground. The middle-aged mage seemed to be a little surprised that Winnie would give in so easily. After being stunned for a moment, he took out something from his pocket and threw it to Winnie. "Take this." Winnie took a look at it and found that it was something like a bracelet. The bracelet emitted a very similar magical wave. When she put the bracelet on her wrist, she felt that the magical wave in her body was tightly suppressed and became extremely sluggish. It was obvious that this was an anti-magic tool. It was rare to see such anti-magic tools in signs. The fact that the mage had taken one out showed that he was well prepared. However, this also proved that the mage had no intention of harming her. Otherwise, there would be no need to go through so much trouble. Winnie was relieved when she thought of this. She looked at Jothian and exchanged glances with him. "Oh right. Also, take off all those weird things you have on you." Seeing the exchange of glances between Winnie and Jothian, the middle-aged mage suddenly thought of something and ordered. The 2 burly men immediately closed in on Winnie. Winnie immediately raised her eyebrows and said sternly, "I'll do it myself. If you let these stinky men get close to me, I'll kill myself immediately." The 2 men had no choice but to stop and look at the middle-aged mage. The mage hesitated for a moment and nodded. "All right, you do it yourself. But you have to understand that I know very well what you have on you. If you still want to hide it, don't blame me for taking it out even if I have to control you completely." Winnie snorted coldly and turned around. She reached into her bosom and took out the magic amplification device and a few other gadgets that she had on her. The middle-aged mage flew over and took these things in his hand. He looked at Winnie from head to toe and nodded. With a wave of his hand, he said, Take them away. The two burly men took Winnie and Jothian, respectively. The other man picked up Hawat, who was struggling from time to time. The group immediately rushed into the nearby forest. After passing through the forest for a while, a clearing appeared in front of them. There were a total of 5 carriages parked in the clearing. The two burly men took Winnie and Jothian into the largest carriage. The middle-aged mage followed and the carriage started moving. You two, I can see that you are both smart people. Then I'll be frank. The middle-aged magician narrowed his eyes as he sized up the two of them and said in a deep voice, "As long as you cooperate obediently, then you will be fine. You will even enjoy good treatment. But if you don't cooperate, we don't mind giving you some trouble. We might even let you experience some pain that you don't want to experience." As he said this, the middle-aged mage glanced at the back of the carriage. Just now, Hawat was stuffed into the back of the carriage. The middle-aged magician's meaning was clear without words. "I have a question," Jothian suddenly said. "What value do we have on us that you would go to such lengths to capture us?" "Yeah, we don't have any special identities. We are just two ordinary commoners. We aren't even nobles. Why do you have to go to such lengths to capture us?" Winnie asked. The middle-aged mage snorted and glanced at the two men. "It's simple. Because you are both from New Flyer." Winnie and Jothian looked at each other. Their eyes were filled with surprise. "We are just from New Flyer. Why do you have to go to such length? We are not important people like the president," Winnie couldn't help but say. The middle-aged mage waved his hand impatiently. "Nonsense. If we could capture Sui, why would we need to go to such lengths? All right, be good and listen. When we get there, you will know what to do." Winnie and Jothian looked at each other again. This was really surprising. Since when did the two of them have such value? Chapter 995. Winnie and Jothian were locked in the horse carriage and couldn't see what was happening outside, but they could still guess a few things based on the sunlight coming in and the path of the horse carriage. The horse carriage was far from being as fast as the magic sedan. After it started, it should have headed north before heading northwest. The horse carriage maintained a speed of around 20 to 30 kilometers an hour. It didn't stop after they got in the horse carriage, only stopping when the sunlight coming in through the window became dimmer and dimmer. When they couldn't see any light at all, it finally stopped. "Come down, we need to rest here." The middle-aged magician coldly said this before watching the two large men bring Winnie and Jothian out of the horse carriage. After the two got out of the horse carriage, they found that they were at the foot of a barren mountain. There wasn't a single person around them. As for the highway, it had been completely separated from the road 2 hours ago. It was very clear that the other side needed to keep their actions secret, so they avoided places with people as much as possible. It was normal for them to choose this barren mountain to rest. Joshua tilted his head and looked at the sky in the west that had completely darkened. He then looked up at the stars in the sky and confirmed that it should be around 7 o'clock at night. As for their location, according to the estimates along the way, they should be around 200 kilometers away from where they were kidnapped. Based on the direction they were heading in, they should be close to the border of the Fok Kingdom. In this direction, other than the Antilla Kingdom, there was only a small duchy called Assur that bordered the Fok Kingdom. As for where it was, he couldn't make a detailed guess. Perhaps because they were already far away from the scene of the incident, the middle-aged magician's expression was obviously a lot more relaxed. He motioned the two to find a place to sit down and then sat down next to them, waiting for the other strong men to start preparing dinner. The large men that the middle-aged magician brought seemed to be well-trained and had experience in camping. It didn't take long for them to set up a small and crude camp. What surprised and amused Jothian and Winnie was that these people didn't make a bonfire as they expected. Instead, they took out 2 magic stoves from one of the carriages and quickly made a simple dinner. Joshua and Winnie couldn't help but have an illusion that they weren't kidnapped at all. Instead, they were here for a picnic. If it wasn't for the fact that there were people guarding them with sharp blades, it would have been a good trip. Now can you tell us why you kidnapped us? Joshian asked the middle-aged mage after taking a few bites. The middle-aged magician glanced at him and then looked at Winnie. He snorted and said, "Kid, actually, our main target is her. You're actually not that valuable." Joshua was stunned, but Winnie couldn't help but chuckle. She asked, "Why is my value higher than his?" "It's very simple. It's because you're a researcher at the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce, and this kid isn't." After hearing this answer, Joshian and Winnie looked at each other. They finally had an idea. "In other words, you're here for her identity as a researcher," Joshian said. "If I'm not wrong, you're here for the technology that she has, right?" The middle-aged magician snorted and didn't answer. However, the fact that he didn't deny this point was enough to prove that Joshian's guess was correct. Joshian couldn't help but shake his head. "If you're here for the technology, then you're obviously not ordinary robbers. And with a powerful magician like you, you should be from some country, right?" "Stop guessing. You'll know when we get there," the middle-aged magician said in a muffled voice. Joshian couldn't help but shake his head. "If you're here for the technology, then what you're doing now is not appropriate. Winnie is just an ordinary researcher at the Academy of Magic. She only has a small part of the technology. You won't be able to get the technology you want from her." "That's right," Winnie agreed. "Currently, there are more than 1,500 researchers in the Academy of Magic of the Chamber of Commerce. Every researcher is only involved in one project. Even if you ask me to hand over all the technology one have, it won't be of much use. It's even more impossible for me to help you make a magic machine. You're most concerned about the military magic machines, and I've never done any research related to the military magic machines. It's useless for you to capture me." The middle-aged magician looked at Winnie expressionlessly and took out a small device from his pocket. "If you've never been involved, then how did you get this?" The small device he took out was the magic shield amplification device that he had taken from Winnie. Winnie shrugged. "I got this through internal channels for self-defense. It doesn't mean that I've been involved in the research. Besides, even if I had been involved, I wouldn't have been able to provide much valuable information. I'm afraid you don't know this, but any research on magic machines usually requires the cooperation of at least a few dozen researchers, and at most a few hundred researchers. If I'm only one person, I won't be of much use." The middle-aged magician stared at Winnie, as if trying to discern the truth in her words. After a while, he shook his head and put the magic shield amplification device back into his pocket. "No matter what, one more is one more." Winnie and Joshian looked at each other and nodded at the same time. They didn't expect the magicians to let them go through just a conversation. Since the magicians had spent so much effort to capture them, of course, they wouldn't let them go easily. But through this conversation, they were sure of the magicians' purpose. Now that they knew that the magicians were here for the information about the magic machines that Winnie, a researcher from New Flyer, had, they were relieved. Of course, this didn't mean that they were going to give up. After following this group of people to their destination, although there was probably no danger to their lives, it was conceivable that they would lose their freedom. This was not something they were willing to accept. Winnie lightly pulled Joshian's hand. It looked like the two of them were holding hands for peace of mind and snuggling together. But in reality, she was tapping Joshian's finger lightly. If one were to observe carefully, they would find that the frequency of her tapping Joshian's palm was very regular and not random. This thing actually originated from a very popular game in the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce. The reason for this game was that the president had mentioned something called Morse code to Evita. It was said that it could rely on the frequency of tapping to transmit some information. The president had only mentioned it once, but Evita remembered it in her heart. In her free time, she had researched a tapping frequency that could be used in practice. Although it wasn't as detailed as the Morse code that the president had mentioned, but it was enough to transmit some simple information. Evita had promoted this little game in the Academy of Magic and received the love of many researchers. Winnie was one of the best, and she had taught this thing to Joshian. It became a little game that the two of them used to flirt with each other in private. But she didn't think that it would be useful in this situation. "Did you leave the signal generator?" Winnie asked. "I left it, but to avoid being discovered, it will be delayed for a while before activating." This was Joshian's answer as he tapped Winnie's palm. "How long will it be delayed?" "About half an hour. Then if nothing unexpected happens, we should be found soon." "Yes." Winnie could not help but smile when she felt Joshian's steady and gentle tap on her palm 3 times to show that he was certain of his answer. The middle-aged magician sitting across from her looked at her in confusion. He didn't understand why this little girl in her 20s could still smile in this situation. Was she not afraid? But then he remembered that although she was only in her 20s, she was already a 6th-rank magician. She was only 2 ranks lower than him. And if she used the military magic machines that New Flyer made, she would even have the ability to fight him head-on. In addition to her identity as a researcher of the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce, her value was far higher than a normal 8th-rank magician like him. This made the middle-aged magician very unhappy. Ever since Archmage Levin Hasek attacked the New Flyer and fell 5 years ago, the New Flyer's reputation in the signs had skyrocketed. Following that, everyone gained a new understanding of magic machines, or rather, the power of military magic machines. This caused all the countries on the continent to pay more attention to the magic machine industry that the New Flyer proposed and led. In the past 5 years, all the countries in the signs had greatly developed the magic machine industry through their cooperation with the New Flyer. After enjoying the benefits of the development of the magic machine industry, all the countries and people in the signs began to have a new understanding of magicians. If magicians in the past relied on their own strength to gain the respect of the people, then with the development of the magic machine industry and the gradual expansion of its influence, the people's demand for magicians was now more reflected in the contributions that magicians made to the development of the magic machine industry. Compared to the reverence they had for magicians in the past, people now respected magicians who had outstanding research on magic machines more. Thus, in just 5 years, the status of magicians in the signs had undergone a huge change. It wasn't that the status of magicians had declined, but that magicians had a high status because of their strength in the past. Now, there was another factor, and that was that magicians had a higher status because of their strength in magic research. This didn't have much of an impact on those high and mighty great magicians or even archmages, but it had a huge impact on ordinary magicians. With his and Winnie's strength, he was an 8th-grade magician, while Winnie was a 6th-grade magician. If it had been the signs of the past, then he would have been respected and valued more because of his higher grade. But in the current signs, Winnie was undoubtedly far more valued and respected than he was. It was for no other reason than the fact that Winnie was a researcher at the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce. The New Flyer undoubtedly represented the most current technology in the magic machine industry. As a researcher at the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce, it was natural that her research on magic machines far exceeded that of other magicians. It was precisely because of Winnie's identity that the power behind the middle-aged magician was willing to do everything in their power to kidnap her. When he thought about how Winnie would be highly valued by those powerful magicians when they returned, and how he would still be treated as a hired thug that could come and go as they pleased, the middle-aged magician was extremely displeased. "Isn't it just some toy that can make this little girl have a higher status than me?" But when he reached out to touch the magic shield amplification device in his pocket, the middle-aged magician's face couldn't help but darken. That's right. It was because of this device that Winnie, a 6th-grade magician, had the ability to resist an 8th-grade magician's attacks. When he thought about how the new flyer even had military magic machines that could kill archmages, the middle-aged magician instantly felt a deep sense of powerlessness and a trace of confusion. Perhaps continuing to pursue the power of magic really had become meaningless. Chapter 996. The next day, the group left the camp. Josian and Winnie were stuffed into the carriage and continued their journey towards the northwest. After about half a day, when the sun was at its hottest, the carriage stopped again. After Joshua and Winnie got off the carriage, they were surprised to find that they were not in the wilderness, but they were not far from it. This was because when they looked around, other than a seemingly large manor, there was only a continuous stretch of hills and a dense forest in front of them. There was no possibility of other people at a glance. Winnie frowned and asked the middle-aged magician, "Hey, did you kidnap me to do magic machine research for you? Are you trying to tell me that this is the place for research?" The middle-aged magician glanced at her and didn't answer. Instead, he motioned for his subordinates to escort the two and Hawat into the manor. Winnie asked him a few more questions, but he still didn't say a word. He was completely different from how he would occasionally talk to the two on the way here. Not long after they entered the manor, a group of people came to greet them. The one at the front was a middle-aged man in noble attire. He looked quite dignified. When he saw Winnie, a trace of joy flashed across his face. He asked the middle-aged magician, "Is she the target this time, Musher?" The middle-aged magician called Musher bowed slightly and answered solemnly, "My lord, this woman is the target of this operation. She is a 3rd-grade researcher from the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce, Winnie Spencer. The young man beside her is her husband, Lierno Josian. This little boy is her nephew, Hawat." The middle-aged magician glanced at Josian and Hawat's faces. He didn't pay them much attention and turned to Winnie with a very amiable smile. "Researcher Winnie, welcome to our secret research institute. I hope you will have a good time here and fully devote yourself to your research." Winnie glanced at him and said coldly, "You have people kidnap us like this and expect me to have a good time?" The middle-aged man laughed. "Although the method of inviting you here is a bit rough, please don't doubt our sincerity. I assure you that you will have the best living and working environment here. There are countless people here for you to order around, as well as countless magic materials for you to use as you wish. I believe that working here will be more convenient and comfortable than working in the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce." Winnie snorted. "What if I want to leave?" "Of course not. Then what if I ask you to release my husband and nephew and let them leave?" "Of course not." "Then can I contact New Flyer and tell them that I'm staying here to work?" "Obviously, this is also not allowed," the middle-aged man said with a smile. "Then you've been talking nonsense for so long." Winnie sighed. "That's why I've always disliked the way you nobles act. Since you've kidnapped me and forced me to work for you, then just say it. Why do you have to beat around the bush and say such high-sounding words? What's the point of that?" The corners of the middle-aged man's mouth twitched, and the smile on his face became a little stiff. He coughed lightly before responding, "Researcher Winnie, I've already said that although your freedom will be restricted to a certain extent, I'll provide you with very good conditions in other aspects. I guarantee that you'll be able to conduct your research here happily. As long as you are willing to cooperate, I can guarantee that you and your family will not be harmed." "In other words, if I don't cooperate, they may be harmed?" Winnie asked. The middle-aged man smiled dangerously. "Of course I don't want things to go that far." "You don't want things to go that far either, do you?" "Humph. Hypocrite." Winnie snorted. The middle-aged man shrugged and spread out his hands. I don't care what you think of me. I just need you to answer one question. Researcher Winnie, are you willing to cooperate with us in our research? You've spent so much effort to bring us here, and you're still acting like this. Are you going to allow me to refuse? Winnie asked with a cold smile. The middle-aged man smiled. If I can get your sincere cooperation, then I obviously don't want our relationship to be too strained. You are a smart person. You should know what to choose. Winnie looked around and sighed. Looks like I don't have a choice? The middle-aged man smiled and said nothing. Winnie stared at him for a while. Just when the middle-aged man thought that she was going to nod in agreement, she suddenly shook her head and smiled mischievously. Unfortunately, I still don't want to. As soon as she finished speaking, Winnie waved her hand and 2 small fireballs flew in front of the 2 burly men who were watching Jothian and Hawat. The 2 of them instinctively tilted their heads, but Winnie had already flown over in an instant. She pressed her hands on Jothian and Hawat's bodies, and then carried them with each hand. The 3 of them flew into the air. The 3 of them had been quiet all this time, not showing any signs of resistance. Now that they had suddenly attacked, it was naturally beyond everyone's expectations. In particular, the middle-aged magus named Mushir was even more stunned. He had clearly put an anti-magic bracelet on Winnie. How could Winnie be able to cast spells so easily? She could even fly up into the sky with the 2 of them? The stern-looking middle-aged man was the first to react. He immediately shouted angrily at Mushir, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and bring them back." Mushir hurriedly replied, "Don't worry, my lord. She can't fly far with 2 people. Your subordinate will bring her back right away." With that, he circulated his magic power and flew up with the 2 other adept magi that the middle-aged man had brought. Mushir wasn't too worried when he saw Winnie and the other 2 already in the air. Winnie was only a 6th-tier magus. It was impossible for her to fly far with 2 people. Moreover, the surroundings were all barren mountains. It was impossible for her to find a suitable place to hide in such a short time. Winnie's actions were unexpected, but in his eyes, it was nothing more than a last-ditch struggle. It was completely meaningless. Just as he was thinking about how he would torture Winnie's husband and nephew to give her a warning, even though Winnie couldn't move, Mushel suddenly sensed an abnormally powerful magical wave coming from afar. He and the other 2 magicians turned their heads at the same time in shock, only to see that in the distant sky, a red ray of light was already rapidly flying towards them. The 3 magi didn't have much time to react. They could only put up a magic shield in an instant. Boom! The red light hit Mushir's magic shield first, causing a huge explosion. Mushel felt as if his mana shield was like snow exposed to the summer sun. It melted in an instant, and then he was blown away by the huge shockwave. The fate of the other 2 magicians was no different from Mushir's. The 3 of them flew out in a parabola in the sky like kites with their strings cut, landing far behind the manor. The middle-aged man on the ground looked in the direction of the red light with a shocked expression. Then he saw a giant black shadow quickly flying over from the horizon, arriving above the manor after a while. After seeing the true appearance of this giant shadow, the middle-aged man's face turned ashen. "It's actually the new Flyer Guard's magic airship. How did they find this place so quickly?" Winnie in the sky had already brought Jothian and Hawat to the side of the magic airship that had suddenly appeared, flying in through the side door. When she entered, Winnie's legs turned soft and she sat down on the ground, letting out a long sigh. I was scared to death. If you came a bit later, I would have been caught by them again." In the magic airship, there was a girl who was around the same age as Winnie who was wearing the uniform of the Fresteck Chamber of Commerce's guards. She said with a smile, "Come on, Winnie, you weren't afraid at all this time, all right? If it was up to me, you and Jothian were just enjoying an unexpected trip abroad." After saying this, she patted the head of Hawat who was in a daze and said in a gentle voice, "It's your little nephew who should have been scared. Hey, Hawat, are you scared?" Hawat looked around the magic airship in a daze before revealing an excited look. His eyes lit up as he shook his head. I'm not scared. Auntie, this is the legendary magic airship, right? The young girl rolled her eyes. Call me big sister. I'm not that old. Right, this is the magic airship. You've never sat in one before, right? This is my first time sitting in a magic sedan. It's too fun. Hawat said with a strong nod. The young girl helplessly patted her forehead. All right, Winnie, it seems like my worries were a bit unnecessary. Your little nephew really is shockingly bold. Winnie gave a snort. When she was about to say something, there was a young man who was around 30 years old, who was also wearing the uniform of the Shinfei guards, who cut her off. Jothian, Winnie, we could have saved you earlier. But in order to find the mastermind behind them, we've made you work a bit harder. This is nothing. Winnie took a deep breath and stood up. She pointed her finger downwards. How do we take care of those fellows down there? The young man came to the window and looked down at the giant manor as his lips curled into a cold smile of disdain. Those fellows actually dared to kidnap our new Flyers people. They really don't know death. I can guarantee that they and the people behind them will regret this impulse. Chapter 997. October of year 3898 wasn't that different from previous years. In Banta City in the south of the continent, the coolness of early autumn had just chased away the last bit of summer's warmth, making the entire city much more refreshing. On this kind of cool autumn day, naturally it was a very suitable time for people to gather. In many places in Signs, many people would take advantage of this day to go on an autumn excursion with their families. They would experience the unique scenery of autumn as the leaves turned red and the fields turned golden. For the people of Banta City, with the Banta City bicycle race that was held each year, it had already become a large festival in Banta City. Countless people, whether they loved cycling or not, would take some time to practice during this time, trying to get a good result in the race. It had to be known, this year was the 10th anniversary of the bicycle race. New Flyer had increased the prize money for this race that they had always been the sponsor of. According to the data released by the Banta Times, the rider who won this year's bicycle race would receive a rich reward of 1,000 gold coins. Even if the income of the people of Banta City was much higher compared to before, 1,000 gold coins was still a very tempting reward for most people. Moreover, even if they couldn't win, second place would still receive 500 gold coins and third place would receive 300 gold coins. Even 4th and 10th place would receive 100 gold coins and 11th to 100th place would receive a consolation prize of 20 gold coins. It was fine if they couldn't get into the top 10, but even if they could get into the top 100 and get 20 gold coins, wouldn't that be equal to a month's salary for most people? While the people of Banta City were filled with enthusiasm for the upcoming Shinfei bicycle race, there was another group of people who were filled with enthusiasm for another event in Banta City. The Signs Continent's Magic Machine Industry Forum. This thing sounded very strange, but it was actually a Magic Machine Industry Forum hosted by the Frestec Chamber of Commerce. The people who were invited to this gathering were the representatives of the various countries and magic machine companies of the Signs. The things they discussed were all related to the magic machine industry, and there was nothing else mixed in. 5 years ago, when the Frestec Chamber of Commerce held their first Magic Machine Industry Forum, there were less than 10 countries and less than 20 companies that were invited. The other countries and companies of the continent didn't understand this forum, so they didn't attach much importance to it. After 4 years of holding it, all the countries and companies of the continent understood that the new flyer would normally announce some important matters related to the magic machine industry on this industry forum and would cooperate with the representatives of the other countries. So almost all the countries and companies of the continent would send representatives to participate in this forum. However, even if the new flyer increased the number of people participating in this forum each year, there was a limit. To be invited by the new flyer, it would depend on one's skills. So now, being invited to this forum was the dream of all the companies of the signs and all the countries and companies related to the magic machine industry. Even for the countries and companies that weren't invited, they would still send representatives to Banta City during this time. They hoped that they could meet the representatives they wanted to meet and obtain various opportunities. According to convention, the Signs Magic Machine Industry Forum would be held from October 3rd to October 10th. It would last for a week, and it would end right before the fall bicycle race in Xinfei. So when it came to October each year, Banta City would be filled with people from various countries. The already prosperous Banta City would become an incomparably lively city. Even if the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce represented the companies that had built 13 hotels in Banta City that had at least 7 floors, they were still filled with guests from all over. Even if they doubled the price, it was still hard to find a room. So Banta City would open up residences at this time each year, letting the guests find a normal residence to stay in. This helped solve this large problem. However, this still couldn't be solved. Because of the large amount of people that came from the Signs Magic Machine Industry Forum, at this time each year, Banta City's City Lord Manor had to specially open up a piece of land in the northeast of Banta City that hadn't been developed yet to build some simple houses for them. But in the end, this could only solve the current problem for now. As the Signs Magic Machine Industry Forum was held each year, the number of people that came would keep increasing. They could barely deal with it this year, but it was hard to say what would happen in the future. Chairman Su, at this time each year, I don't know if I should thank you or complain about you. Banta City's City Lord Count Serene looked at Su-yi sitting in front of him with a bitter smile while leisurely drinking tea, and he couldn't help shaking his head. Although there are more people coming and it's very helpful to increase the prosperity of our Banta City. But at this time each year, I have to rack my brains to arrange for these guests, so it really is a headache. Su-yi put down his teacup and revealed a faint smile. Sir Marquis, this is your honor as Banta City's City Lord. Think about it, other than Banta City, which other city on the continent would have this many people flock to at this time? Celine Count had a look of disapproval. If you held this forum somewhere else, I can guarantee that I wouldn't have this problem. Then I'll hold it in a different place next year. What do you think? Su-yi said with a faint smile. Anyway, there are many people who have appealed to me, saying that Banta City is too far from their countries and it's inconvenient for them to rush over. They hope that I can change the location of the forum. Forget it. Celine Count quickly waved his hand and said with a smile, although it is a bit troublesome, compared to the benefits it brings to our Banta City, it isn't much. Do you really think this? Su-yi looked at Celine Count. Of course. Celine Count gave a strong nod, looking very sincere. What a joke. If the Frestec Chamber of Commerce really changed the location of the forum, where would they get back the large amounts of orders that the various magic machine companies of Banta City got from this forum? If they lost this forum, Banta City would lose at least 1,000,000 gold coins each year. Su-yi looked at the expression on Celine Count's face and suddenly shook his head, giving a soft sigh. To tell you the truth, Sir Count, even if you didn't say anything, the location of the forum next year would have to be changed. Celine Count was shocked. Why? Chairman Su, could it be that our Banta City isn't doing well? Why do you want to change the location? I was just joking when I said that I wanted to complain, don't misunderstand. No, this isn't related to you, there isn't anything that Banta City isn't doing well. It's just that it should be changed. Su-yi said with a serious look. When I first held this forum, it was to promote the development of the magic machine industry on the continent, so holding it in the same place isn't good for this. As for why it was held in Banta City in the past few years, I think Sir Count should be clear on this. Serene Count was silent for a bit before saying with a soft sigh, I understand, Chairman Su, you are a nostalgic person. Right, Banta City is where our new flyer was established, so it has a very special place in my heart. I've always held the forum here in the past few years, and not near our new flyer. Other than showing that our new flyer is willing to cooperate with everyone, the main reason is because I have a special feeling for this place. Then, it can't be held here? It isn't that it can't, but this choice isn't the most important, Sui said with a faint smile. Serene Count slightly knit his brows. Does Her Majesty know about this? I informed her as soon as possible. Then Her Majesty's opinion is, you didn't receive any orders, right? Serene Count was silent. After thinking for a bit, he slowly let out a sigh and his expression returned to normal. All right, since this is Chairman Su's decision, I have no objections. But Chairman Su, can you tell me ahead of time where the forum will be held next year? If nothing unexpected happens, it should be in Wimbledon City, Sui said. The capital of the Kanla Empire? I thought that it would be the capital of the Mala Empire, Angelo City. That should be the choice the year after next. Serene Count calculated in his heart, and when he was about to speak again, there was a knock on the door. Serene Count couldn't help knitting his brows. He had told them that he was having a secret discussion with Chairman Su, so they weren't allowed to be disturbed. But on second thought, if the servants still came to disturb him under such circumstances, then something very important must have happened. Thinking of this, he first looked at Sui with a questioning look. Seeing Sui nod, he said in a loud voice, Come in. The door was pushed open, and Check, the manager of the city lord's mansion, led an elf in new flyer's uniform in. Seeing the elf, Sui paused for a moment and asked, Cindy, what happened? The female elf called Cindy bowed to Serene Count and quickly walked to Sui. She took out a document from her bag and handed it to Sui. Mr. President, this is the report that just came in, please take a look. Sui took the report with a puzzled expression. After reading it, he immediately frowned deeply. However, by the time he finished reading, his expression had already returned to normal. Mr. Count. Sui turned to look at Serene Count. The Principality of Assyria is also on the list of invitees, right? Serene Count paused for a moment. He took out a document from the table and flipped through it for a while. He nodded and said, Yes, the Principality of Assyria was indeed invited, and they sent a delegation of 7 people. Well, please send someone to inform them that they have lost the qualification to participate in this industry forum, and New Flyer will henceforth sever all cooperation with the Principality of Assyria. Ah! Count Serene looked at Sui in surprise, not understanding what he meant. Chapter 998. This year's Science Magic Industry Forum was still a grand gathering that attracted the attention of all countries on the continent. According to the previously announced list, there were a total of 57 countries that received New Flyer's invitation to participate in this event, and there were 326 representatives of chambers of commerce. Just these alone, the number of participants had exceeded 2,000. The number of people that didn't receive an invitation from New Flyer and didn't appear on the announced list far exceeded this number. At the same time, various newspapers sent reporters to follow up on this forum, making everyone's eyes involuntarily focused on it. With such a strong focus, the day before the official opening of the Industry Forum, New Flyer's Industry Forum Organizing Committee made an announcement to the public, which naturally quickly spread and attracted everyone's attention. The New Flyer Industry Forum Organizing Committee announced that the Principality of Assyria's qualification to participate in the Industry Forum and refused to allow Assyria to participate in any future Industry Forum held by New Flyer. As soon as this news came out, it immediately caused an uproar. The Science Magic Industry Forum had been established for 5 years. Because New Flyer's purpose had always been to exchange and promote the magic industry through this industry forum, every year they would expand the number of invited representatives compared to the previous year. They had always welcomed any countries and chambers of commerce that wished to participate in the magic industry. With such a purpose, the industry forum had more and more representatives participating in it, and the scale naturally grew larger and larger. Could be said that everything was moving towards a very good trend. However, this year, New Flyer suddenly removed the participation of a country and even directly declared that this country would no longer have the qualifications to participate in the industry in the future. This was really surprising. Although Assyria was only an inconspicuous small principality, it was still a country. Before this, the Frestek Chamber of Commerce's chairman Su-yi had emphasized that he hoped that all the countries on the continent would let go of their old ideas and invest in the new magic machine industry, using this new industry to improve the lives of their citizens. So the Frestek Chamber of Commerce had always been willing to cooperate with any country, not being biased at all. Then why did the Frestek Chamber of Commerce suddenly give the death sentence to the Assyrian duchy? Yes, in the eyes of most people, New Flyer's statement was a death sentence for Assyria. This wasn't an exaggeration at all. Since Archmage Levin Hassek's attack on New Flyer 5 years ago, all countries and people on the continent no longer had any doubts about the impact of the magic industry and began to actively invest in the development of the magic industry. Even the Kandla Empire and Mala Empire put down their previous more reserved attitudes and took the initiative to cooperate with New Flyer in many ways. After a few years of investment and development, all countries fully experienced the changes and improvements of the magic industry. Almost everyone believed that the magic industry had become the most important thing on the continent. If a country didn't invest in this, they would fall far behind and even be destroyed. So in these years, all the countries did their best to build a good relationship with the Frestek Chamber of Commerce. They hoped that they could obtain more technology from the Frestek Chamber of Commerce and develop their magic machine industry. At this time, the Assyria Duchy had been disqualified from participating in this important industry forum by New Flyer, which was equal to them losing the possibility of developing the magic industry. If that was the case, the only fate that awaited this small duchy was destruction. But why was this? Although New Flyer's chairman Su-yi had always had a strong attitude, he had always been very active in supporting the development of the magic industry. He had always been willing to help other countries and had never discriminated against any country or company. So why was he targeting a small duchy like the Assyria Duchy this time? Everyone's questions were answered in the Banta Times, that came out later that day. The Assyria Duchy being disqualified from the industry forum was such an important piece of news, so the Banta Times would naturally report it on the front page. According to the information revealed in the Banta Times, the reason why the Assur Duchy received such special treatment from the Frestek Chamber of Commerce was because the Assur Duchy had secretly sent people to kidnap 2 employees of the Frestek Chamber of Commerce. One of them was a researcher from the Frestek Chamber of Commerce's magic research facility. They wanted this researcher to work for them and reveal the information he had on magic machines. New Flyer's chairman Su-yi flew into a rage after learning of this and immediately announced that the Assyria Duchy was an enemy of the New Flyer. Not only did he have the industry forum disqualify the Assyria Duchy from participating in the industry forum, he also made the Assyria Duchy an unwelcome target, cutting off all cooperation between the New Flyer and the Assyria Duchy. Su-yi even said that the New Flyer reserved the right to pursue this matter with the Assyria Duchy. This also meant that the New Flyer would very likely launch a military operation against the Assyria Duchy because of this matter. At the end of the report, the Banta Times said that this matter was brought on by the Assyria Duchy. The New Flyer's reaction could be understood, No one should think of obtaining the New Flyers technology by kidnapping the New Flyers employees. They would definitely be met with a counterattack from the New Flyer. After reading this report, everyone finally understood the reason for this matter. Most people had the same reaction to the Assyria Duchy's actions. The Assyria Duchy was too stupid. It was just a small duchy. They actually dared to take such a large risk to kidnap the New Flyers employees. Didn't they know that the New Flyers chairman, Su-yi, had always been very tough? 5 years ago, the Mana Magic Kingdom had sent 2 Arch-Magi to attack the New Flight Commerce main base. Although the New Flight Commerce main base had suffered large losses, it had also caused the death of an Arch-Magus like Levin Hasek. Then the New Flyer launched a powerful counterattack against the Mana Magic Kingdom, using just 3 months to defeat the Mana Magic Kingdom's army. It turned the Mana Magic Kingdom from the 3rd strongest military power on the continent to a very normal kingdom. The Mage Legion that the Mana Magic Kingdom was so proud of couldn't even withstand a single blow from the New Flyers guards. The only ones who had a chance to defeat the New Flyers guards were the other 4 Arch-Magi. Because of Levin Hasek's unexpected death, they chose to stand by and watch. As a result, the Mana Magic Kingdom couldn't fight back against the attacks of the New Flyers guards. In the end, they could only humiliatingly choose to surrender and negotiate for peace. Although the Mana Magic Kingdom had become one of the countries with the best magic industry in the signs because of the New Flyers' strong investment, coupled with the large amount of mage resources and various mineral resources in the country, the Mana Magic Kingdom had become one of the countries with the best magic industry development in the signs. However, compared to the title of the 3rd strongest country after the 2 empires, it was still a far cry. 5 years ago, the New Flyer dared to directly attack the Mana Magic Kingdom, let alone a small and inconspicuous principality like the Duchy of Assur. In everyone's opinion, as long as the New Flyer was willing, after dispatching the New Flyer's guards, the Duchy of Assur would be destroyed in minutes. There would be no accident. Therefore, after reading this report, the Duchy of Assur, which had already been sentenced to death in everyone's minds, was completely dead. Of course, not everyone would accept this result calmly. Among them, the one who was most unwilling to believe it was the head of the delegation sent by the Duchy of Assur to participate in this industry forum. He was also the brother of the Grand Duke of Assur, Birmingham Count. CEO Kennard, please help me. Can you let me see Chairman Su? I will explain to him that all of this is a misunderstanding. It's really just a misunderstanding. Count Birmingham anxiously looked at Kennard in front of him, almost begging him with a hoarse voice. He had been leading the Assur delegation this time, carefully preparing for tomorrow's industry forum. He was planning on using this chance to get to know some important people who were also participating in the industry forum. The most important thing was to establish a good relationship with the New Flyer, creating a good foundation for the Assur Duchy's future development. But he never thought that he would receive an official notice from the Industry Forum Organizing Committee this morning, canceling their right to participate in the Industry Forum. After he learned the whole story from the Banta Times, he immediately wanted to find Su-yi to explain. However, Su-yi avoided him, so he could only turn around and beg Kennard. Misunderstanding? Kennard gave a soft snort and raised the report in his hand. I just received a detailed report on this matter, and it clearly recorded how our company's 2 employees were captured by your duchy. Now you're telling me that it's a misunderstanding? Do you think I'm a child? No, I definitely didn't mean to offend you. Count Birmingham quickly waved his hand. But this is indeed a misunderstanding. Sir Kennard, think about it, our Assur Duchy is only a small duchy. How could we have the guts to kidnap your New Flyers employees? Moreover, we sent a representative to this industry forum this time. It was clear that we hoped to cooperate with your Frestek Chamber of Commerce, so how could we do something like this behind your back? This doesn't make sense, don't you think so? Saying one thing on the surface and another behind your back. This matter isn't strange. Kennard coldly said. No. Definitely not. Count Birmingham excitedly raised his hand and loudly said, Sir Kennard, gods above, I swear on my life's honor that this matter is definitely not related to Big Brother at all. I can be sure that this is the private action of some villains with ulterior motives in the duchy. Big Brother and I are completely unaware. Is that so? Kennard glanced at him, and then gently shook his head. But this has nothing to do with me. I only know that our company's employees were kidnapped by people from your duchy, and their lives were even threatened. The chairman is very angry about this, so you have to pay the price. Hearing Kennard's harsh words, Count Birmingham didn't show any anxiety or frustration. Instead, his spirit was shaken, and his eyes widened as he looked at Kennard. Sir Kennard, you... No, Chairman Sue's meaning is... Kennard waved his hand. The chairman's meaning is already very clear. Our Chamber of Commerce reserves the right to take revenge on your Duchy of Assur. As for the specifics, of course, it depends on what your Duchy of Assur does. Seeing the deep expression on Kennard's face, Count Birmingham thought for a moment, took a deep breath, and his expression was calm. After bowing to Kennard, he carefully asked, Then, can I go to Chairman Sue and personally explain this misunderstanding? The chairman is very busy right now. Kennard lightly responded. Count Birmingham pondered for a moment and nodded vigorously. Well, Sir Kennard, please tell Chairman Sue that I will go back and discuss with the Grand Duke. I will definitely give Chairman Sue a satisfactory explanation. Kennard gently nodded and watched Count Birmingham turn and leave. Chapter 999. After seeing Count Birmingham leave in the magic sedan through the window, Kennard held the report in his hand as he passed through 2 corridors. He came to the other corner of the Banta City Lord Manor that was prepared for this industry forum. After opening a very normal door, he saw Sue-Yi sitting behind a large table with his head down, like he was looking over some document. Sue-Yi's new secretary, the elven girl Cindy from the Nightsong tribe, was standing on the side, looking over some documents in her hands. You sent away those people from the Assyrian duchy? Sue-Yi asked without looking up. Count Birmingham just left. Kennard replied before coming over to give him the report. He said that he would discuss this with the Assyrian Duke after going back and try to give Sir Chairman a satisfactory explanation. It seems like he isn't that stupid. Sue-Yi looked up and revealed a faint smile. To be honest, when I said that we would take revenge on the Assyrian duchy, I was just trying to scare them. There are several countries between us and the Assyrian duchy. There really aren't any benefits if we go that far to attack them. I understand. Kennard also revealed a smile. This time, I just wanted to give a warning to those people who have bad ideas about our company. But Sir Chairman, through this matter, I feel that we need to pay attention to this matter. After receiving the report, I've made a rough count. In the past 5 years, there have been many researchers that have left our company's Academy of Magic. Just last year alone, there were 37 researchers that left. How many researchers does the Academy of Magic have in total? Sue-Yi asked back. A total of 1,374. Kennard replied. Then 37 isn't considered high. Sue-Yi raised his hand and cut off Kennard. I know what you want to say. You're just worried that the loss of our company's researchers will become serious. But in fact, judging from the current situation, this loss isn't serious. Instead, it seems to me that it's already very mild. In fact, I'm also very disappointed because this means that the other countries and companies still don't really value the magic machine industry, to the extent that they don't value the most precious researchers of our company. No, they must have taken it very seriously. Otherwise, they wouldn't have kidnapped the researchers this time, Kennard retorted. All right, let's take it that they're paying attention to us, but it's still not enough. Sui rubbed his chin and pondered for a moment before nodding his head. Well, I'm going to focus on these things in the next few days on the industry forum. Kennard didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Mr. President, are you trying to remind others to kidnap our Chamber of Commerce's researchers? No, of course not. Sui thought about it and turned to Cindy. Cindy, write it down. He asked the Academy of Magic to work with the Military Magic Machinery Research Institute to jointly develop a more sensitive magic signal transmitter and receiver and equip every researcher with it. I want to make sure that when our company's researchers meet an accident, they can immediately send out an alarm, so we can organize a rescue as soon as possible. Yes. Cindy took out her notebook and wrote down this order word for word. Other than that, Kennard, regarding the distribution of the company's guards and the corresponding plans, you have to pay close attention. This time it was Winnie and Jothian's luck that was good. There was a magic airship that passed by and received their signal for help, so they were able to save them in time. If it was anywhere else, they wouldn't be this lucky, and we might never see them again. This is indeed a big problem. Kennard knit his brows to think for a bit before saying with a bit of difficulty, but Sir Chairman, we can send guards to countries that are strategic partners to patrol, but for countries like the Kanla Empire, the Mala Empire, or even some large kingdoms, they definitely won't be willing to accept an army that isn't under their control stationed in their territory. So I want you to first count the countries and regions that can do this and then make a plan that covers as much as possible. Of course, the best method is to increase the distance of the magic signal, but this is a technical problem and can't be solved for now. Sui thought about it before waving his hand. Forget it, you take care of that first, we'll take care of the other things slowly. Then, Sir Chairman, as for the Assyrian Duchy, what are your specific thoughts? Kennard asked. What kind of price do you want the Assyrian Duchy to pay? How should I reply to them? Remember 3 things. Sui raised 3 fingers. First, I need the Assyrian Duchy to show the right attitude. You should understand this better than me. Second, we need specific compensation. It's for Joshian and Winnie, as well as for our company's officials. Third, there are some follow-up plans that will depend on the situation, so there's no rush for now. Okay. Kennard nodded his head and noted it down. After explaining these, Sui fell into deep thought again. Kennard waited patiently for a while. Then, Sui suddenly tapped the table with his fingers. It seemed like he was asking Kennard, but it also seemed like he was talking to himself. You say, even an inconspicuous small principality, like the Principality of Assur, has taken the risk to do such a thing. Should I be more generous in this industry forum? Kennard and Cindy looked at each other. For a while, they didn't know how to react. ####. A week later, the Fifth Signs Magic Industry Forum came to a successful end. This Signs Continent's Magic Machine Industry Forum was without a doubt a very successful meeting because according to the statistics, in this industry forum, after the representatives of the various countries and companies discussed with each other, there were over 4,000 large and small cooperation projects. The amount of orders involved was a shocking 1.6 billion gold coins, and the total amount of cooperation was estimated to be over 4 billion gold coins. In the history of the Signs Continent, although there had been similar business gatherings before, there had never been a business gatherings that had gathered this many countries and companies. There had also never been a business gatherings that had involved such a shocking amount of transactions. When the Signs Magic Industry Forum was held last year, the total transaction amount was only less than 500 million gold coins. Now that a year had passed, this number had increased by several times. Just based on this, everyone understood that the Magic Machine Industry Forum held by the Frestec Chamber of Commerce was a powerful business conference with practical significance. Moreover, this also proved from another angle that the Xinfei Chamber of Commerce had developed the magic machine industry with a large amount of potential. Almost as soon as this data was published in the newspapers by the industry forum, there were countless companies related to the magic machine industry that appeared in signs. Even the Chimera Chamber of Commerce, that had always been aloof on the continent and was also the largest company on the continent, announced that they would be investing in the magic machine industry in the Kandla Empire. This meant that the Chimera Chamber of Commerce couldn't hold back and would be joining the most popular industry. For the various countries and companies that participated in this industry forum, their biggest harvest wasn't the transactions that were made, but rather the policies that New Flyer announced on the industry forum. The Frestec Chamber of Commerce's chairman Sue E. had represented the Frestec Chamber of Commerce to announce on the industry forum that the Frestec Chamber of Commerce would be releasing the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's magic machine technology in the next 2 years. This included the agricultural magic machine technology that countless countries and companies had developed, as well as the production magic machine technology. Sue E. promised that the New Flyer would set a public price for these two technologies. Any country or company that needed this technology, or even an individual, could buy it. Moreover, the New Flyer would follow the usual practices and ensure that the users who bought this technology could grasp it, allowing them to make agricultural magic machines and production magic machines. Of course, according to the usual practices, the Xinfei Chamber of Commerce would only release the basic low-end technology and wouldn't sell the mid to high-end technology. According to what Sue E. said, this was to let the other countries and companies work hard to develop their own technology, allowing them to have their own technology. Through everyone's research, the magic machine industry could develop faster in the signs market. Regarding Sue Yi's public statement, most people snorted in disdain in private. Pay. What, letting others work hard to develop their own technology? Isn't it just because your New Flyer is afraid that if you sell your high-end technology, others will catch up to you, and you won't be able to sell your New Flyer products? This was just basic business knowledge, but Sue E said it in such a dignified manner, it really made people feel disgusted. However, no matter what they thought, everyone cheered for Sue Yi's decision on the surface. In the end, the New Flyer had most of the magic machine technology. If the New Flyer didn't announce it and relied on the other countries and companies to develop it, it would be hard to imagine the amount of time, effort, and money it would take. Compared to this, even if it wasn't cheap to buy the technology from the New Flyer, it was still much more worth it. Chapter 1000. Other than the transfer of the civil magic machine technology, the most eye-catching thing was naturally the military magic machine technology policies that Sue E had announced on the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's behalf. However, when it came to the military magic machine technology, Sue E wasn't as generous as when it came to the civil magic machine technology. According to the strategic partnership plan New Flyer had made 7 years ago, Xinfei merchants would only release the military magic machine technology to the countries that had signed a strategic partnership agreement with New Flyer. Moreover, there was a limit to this and it would be released in batches. Only when a country's magic machine industry reached a certain level and they obtained the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's industrial system, could they obtain the military magic machine technology from the Frestec Chamber of Commerce. In this industrial forum, New Flyer had announced that there were 3 countries that had reached the 3rd level industrial system. New Flyer would be releasing the individual magic cannons, the 75mm magic cannons, the basic magic shield, and other military magic machine technology to these 3 countries. At the same time, they would be selling some high-end military magic machines to these 3 countries, helping them form a modern army around the military magic machines. When announcing this, New Flyer had only announced the name of one of the countries, which was the Kingdom of Ruhr. They didn't announce the other 2 countries. New Flyer said that the other 2 countries didn't announce it to the public, but when it fell into the ears of others, it created all kinds of guesses. After proving their strength several times, in front of an army with military magic machines. A traditional army couldn't take a single blow. So once a country's army was fully equipped with military magic machines, their battle strength would explosively increase. It could even allow a small country that wasn't worth mentioning to have an incomparably strong army. So other than the Kingdom of Ruhr, who the other two countries were, this was a very important piece of information. Because once they grasped this, it would be easier for the other countries to adjust their attitudes and strategies against these two countries. Otherwise, if they misjudged the strength of one side because of this, it would be too late to regret it. The Ruhr Kingdom chose to announce it to the public was clearly to prevent the Canla Empire from invading. As for the other two countries, they chose not to make it public. Their motives were somewhat intriguing, however. This wasn't some secret information. After all, a lot of things were needed to reach the level 3 magical industrial system that New Flyer rated as the foundation. It was hard to hide this fact completely. Moreover, if he wanted to obtain a large amount of military magic machine-related technical support from New Flyer, as well as some of the high-end military magic machines, it would be difficult for him to hide it completely. As long as they increased their investigation efforts, it wouldn't be difficult to find out who these two countries were. The reason why New Flyer chose to announce this news on the industry forum was clearly to warn other countries. If they didn't follow the New Flyer's plan to improve their magic industry, they would be left behind by other countries. At that time, it would be hard to predict what would happen. Thus, when the Fifth Signs Magic Industry Forum ended, all of Signs became lively. Whether it was for the various deals and projects reached on the industry forum, or for the future development of each country or chamber of commerce, or even for their survival, almost all the countries, chambers of commerce, and even individuals on the continent were investing in the magic machine industry. This trend, led by the Shinfei Chamber of Commerce, had already swept through all of Signs after the fall of Archmagus Levin Hasek. Every time he thought of this, Sui couldn't help but secretly thank Archmagus Levin Hasek. If it wasn't for him and Sarandal Cray attacking the New Flight Commerce main base and being killed by the traps he had set up long ago, the people of Signs probably wouldn't have recognized the huge impact of the magic machine industry so quickly and invested so much in developing it. When he thought of this, Sui couldn't help but turn his head to look at the expressionless Archmagus Sarandal Cray beside him. If this Archmagus had also fallen 5 years ago, wouldn't it have shocked the rest of the continent even more? Perhaps sensing the malice in Sui's eyes, Sarandal Cray stopped walking and turned his head to look at Sui in confusion. He discovered that Sui was looking at him strangely. "Chairman Su, is there something wrong with me?" Sarandal Cray couldn't help but ask. "Ah, no. No, it's nothing." Sui quickly laughed into the sky and changed the topic. "Your Excellency Cray, I'm just very curious. The Mana Magic Kingdom already has good research conditions, so why did you choose to join our Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce?" Sarandal Cray had suddenly appeared 5 days after Sui returned to the New Flight Commerce main base from Banta City after participating in the Magic Machine Industry Forum. When they first found him, everyone in the New Flyer was very nervous. They were afraid that this Archmagus who had disappeared 5 years ago would suddenly appear here to take revenge for what happened 5 years ago. Who would have thought that not only did Sarandal Cray not show any hostility, he surprised everyone by saying that he wanted to join the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce to research magic machines. Sui, who had rushed over after receiving the report, saw Sarandal Cray and felt that he was sincere after talking to him, so naturally he felt that it was strange. He was a dignified archmage. Even if his reputation had been damaged because he had run away after attacking the New Flyer with Archmagus Levin Hasek 5 years ago, he was still an Archmagus in the end. He wasn't someone normal people or magicians could compare to. From Suyi's personal point of view, He naturally hoped that another archmagus would choose to join the new flyer to research magic machines. However, from an objective point of view, this was a bit incomprehensible. Even if Cray the Sorcerer's views had changed greatly in the past 5 years, and he had started to research magic machines, he could have stayed in the Mana Magic Kingdom to research related magic machines. There was no need for him to come to the new flyer, their theoretical enemy. Chairman Su, if I were to stay in the Mana Magic Kingdom, how long do you think I would need to research before the Mana Magic Kingdom's magic industry technology, or more accurately, military magic machine technology, surpasses your new flyers? Cray the Sorcerer asked in return. Well, Sui shrugged and spread his hands. I can't guarantee it. However, I think that it would take at least a few decades for you to catch up to our Chamber of Commerce. I'm already 73 years old this year. Do you think I can still live for a few more decades? Cray the Sorcerer asked again. 73 years old? Sui muttered in a low voice. He thought that this Cray the Sorcerer looked to be in his 50s or 60s, but he was already about the same age as Mentor Carmilla. It seemed that once a mage became a Grand Magus, their age would increase greatly. Being able to maintain one's prime after becoming a Grand Magus was no joke. Most Grand Magi can live past 100 years old. I think that you won't be an exception. If we calculate it this way, you should be able to live for at least another 30 years without a problem. Sui replied after some consideration. Then do you think that 30 years is enough for the Mana Magic Kingdom to surpass your new flyer? Cray the Sorcerer asked again. Impossible. Sui immediately shook his head. The creation of a magic industrial system needs to be accumulated bit by bit, and technology needs to be improved through continuous trial and error. Even if I were to completely open up all the technological information that our Chamber of Commerce holds to the Mana Magic Kingdom, it would still take a long time for the Mana Magic Kingdom to completely grasp this information. As for surpassing our Chamber of Commerce, that would require the efforts of several generations. Therefore, if I were to stay in the Mana Magic Kingdom, it would be impossible for me to defeat you in my lifetime. Cray the Sorcerer sighed softly. Sui suddenly stared blankly. Defeat me? Your Excellency Cray, you want to defeat me? With your current strength as a Grand Magus, this should be very easy. 5 years ago, Levin and I both thought the same, but in the end, Levin was defeated and killed, and I was forced to flee. And now, 5 years later, Cray the Sorcerer stared deeply at Sui, the expression on his face extremely complicated. Chairman Su, if I'm not wrong, I'm afraid that you already have the strength of a 5-star great magician, and are only a step away from becoming a Grand Magus, right? Sui laughed mischievously. I haven't gone to the Sorcerer's Guild to get a rank evaluation, so I don't know what my strength is. Sorcerer's Guild? Humph. Cray the Sorcerer let out a disdainful snort. What qualifications do these guys have to be evaluated as a Grand Magus? If I feel that you have the strength, then you do. Sui helplessly spread out his hands. All right then, if you say that I have the strength of a 5-star great magician, then I do. But this doesn't seem to have anything to do with what you just said about you not being able to defeat me in your lifetime, right? Of course it does. Cray the Sorcerer sternly said. Even now, I don't know what methods you used to kill Levin 5 years ago, but I'm certain that 5 years ago, I wasn't stronger than Levin. If it was me, I'm afraid that I would have died as well. And 5 years later, not only have you become a lot stronger, the things that your Xinfei Chamber of Commerce is researching have also become a lot stronger. I haven't made any progress compared to 5 years ago, so there's even less of a chance for me to defeat you. So? Sui found it funny as he asked back. So I want to join your new flyer and focus on researching the things that you used to kill Levin 5 years ago, and then defeat you. Cray the Sorcerer stared into Sui's eyes and said with a serious expression. Sui didn't avoid his gaze in the slightest, and met his gaze with a faint smile. In other words, you want to join our new flyer and research the powers of our Chamber of Commerce that can even kill a Grand Magus, and then use this research to defeat me. Wait, you want to defeat me, not kill me? I have no intention of killing you. Levin isn't my friend, and I don't have any enmity with you. I only want to defeat you. Cray the sorcerer shook his head. Alright, even if you want to defeat me. But Cray the sorcerer, why do you think that I would agree to let an incomparably powerful Grand Magus like you grasp the top secrets of our Chamber of Commerce, and then defeat me in the end? Even though you say that you don't want to kill me, do you think I'll believe you? Sui asked again. Cray the sorcerer and Sui silently looked at each other for a while, then slowly and unusually resolutely nodded. You will. Sui, you're a madman, I can see that. Sui was silent for a moment, then laughed out loud. Alright, Cray the sorcerer, you win. Chapter 1001. It would be a joke to say that Sui completely trusted Sarandal Cray. After all, this fellow had attacked the new Flight Commerce main base with Levin Hasek 5 years ago. Although he'd only fought a great battle with Teacher Carmilla and retreated when he sensed Levin Hasek's unexpected death and hadn't caused much damage to the new flyer, he was undoubtedly the enemy of the new flyer in the eyes of others. When faced with such a powerful enemy at the level of a Magus, it was incomprehensible if one didn't raise their guard and prevent him from launching another attack at any time. Sui had actually agreed to his request to join the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce. In the eyes of everyone in the new flyer, this was simply madness. Sui didn't completely believe that Cray the sorcerer would wholeheartedly work for the new flyer like Teacher Carmilla. He also felt that Cray the sorcerer would try to infiltrate the new flyer and obtain a large amount of important technological information related to magic machines before turning around to deal with the new flyer. However, after some consideration, Sui still agreed. In Sui's eyes, there were all sorts of hidden dangers with Cray the sorcerer joining the new flyer. It could even lead to the leakage of many of the new flyer's high-end technological information. However, there were ways to avoid such risks and hidden dangers. Even if they did occur, they could be controlled within an acceptable range. Compared to the benefits of Cray the sorcerer joining the new flyer and working for the new flyer, the losses from these risks and hidden dangers were much smaller. As for what benefits Cray the sorcerer would bring to the table? First, even though the new flyer already had Teacher Carmilla, in everyone's eyes, the only reason Teacher Carmilla worked for the new flyer was because of her personal relationship with Sui. It wasn't because the new flyer was enough to attract a Magus like him. Now that Cray the sorcerer had also chosen to work for the new flyer, it meant that the new flyer had truly attracted a Magus to join them. There was no need to doubt the new flyer's reputation on the Signs continent. However, because the new flyer had only been established for a little over 10 years, and because the new flyer had always been located in the small country of the Principality of Constantine, no matter how famous the new flyer was, people always felt that the new flyer was a bit lacking compared to the established companies on the continent. Now that Cray the sorcerer had joined, the new flyer's reputation had instantly risen by more than one level. It had to be known that in the history of Signs, even though there had been powerful magi who worked for certain companies, most of them were only there in name. Moreover, the companies they worked for in name were all the top companies on the Signs continent. Now that Cray the sorcerer had joined the new flyer, it wasn't just in name. He was actually going to work for the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce. His nature was a level higher than that of the previous magi. Therefore, the increase in the foundation of the new flyer was extremely significant. Secondly, even if one didn't talk about the great increase in reputation that Cray the sorcerer had brought to the new flyer, just Cray the sorcerer himself was an extremely rare high-end talent in Suyi's eyes. Although most of the magic machines that the new flyer was researching currently only required the knowledge of ordinary low-level magic, this was usually reflected in the civilian stage. For the sake of popularizing it, they only chose to use low-level magic so that most ordinary mages could participate in the research. However, Sue was very clear that the development of the magic machine industry couldn't escape the need for high-end research. Before this, the new flyer had the support of the three great mages Sue, Runa, and Toluchi, as well as mentor Carmilla, who was a top-notch mage. This allowed the new flyer to make breakthroughs in high-end magic machine industry research. However, Sue still felt that it was far from enough. The most obvious difference was that in many aspects that involved the truly top-notch magic research, even Sue and the other two great mages couldn't participate in it. Only mentor Carmilla could conduct research on her own. Now that Cray the Sorcerer had joined, there was another researcher on the same level as mentor Carmilla. If the two could cooperate well, New Flyer's research on high-end magic machine industry theory would definitely advance by leaps and bounds. But are you really not worried that this Cray the Sorcerer will run back to the Mana Magic Kingdom with the technical data after mastering those high-end technologies? Elder Elucia frowned slightly as she looked at Sue with a puzzled expression. If I say that I'm really not worried, would you believe me? Sue asked back with a smile. Elder Elucia thought seriously for a while, then suddenly sighed and shook her head. I don't know. You humans' thoughts are very complicated, and Chairman Sue's thoughts have always been especially complicated among humans. I can't guess. Sue couldn't help but laugh and waved his hand. Elder Elucia, you don't have to be so serious. I'm just joking. But to be honest, I'm really not worried about this problem. Why? Elder Elucia was puzzled. Haven't you always emphasized that technology is the foundation of industry? You've always emphasized that New Flyer has always had the advantage because you have the absolute lead in technology. If Cray the Sorcerer leaked your most important and high-end technology, wouldn't it be a very serious blow to the Chamber of Commerce? How many types of magic machine-related technology do you think our Chamber of Commerce has? Sue asked with a smile. Elder Elucia was slightly startled and shook her head. I don't know. Then let's change the question. Elder Elucia, how many types of technology does your Nightsong tribe have? Elder Elucia thought for a while. I don't have a specific count, but if we break it down, there should be over 100 types. Then do you think that if we throw an outsider into your tribe and let him spend some time with it, he would be able to grasp over 100 types of technology? Of course that's impossible. Elder Elucia immediately shook her head. Every type of technology involves a lot of magic knowledge, as well as knowledge that only our elven race and even our Nightsong tribe have grasped. There's also the results of our research over the years, all of which contain the blood and sweat of many of our people. Even if we fully disclose it to one person, he wouldn't be able to grasp it all by himself. That's why. Sue spread his hands. The magic machine-related technology that our Chamber of Commerce has far surpassed your Nightsong tribes. All kinds of technological information have already filled several large rooms in the Academy of Magic. Even if I fully disclose it to Cray the Sorcerer, how much can he grasp? Moreover, with his current level, it's still a problem whether he can understand it. He's a magus, why wouldn't he understand it? Elder Elucia couldn't help but retort. Sue smiled but didn't say anything. Elder Elucia pondered for a moment and instantly realized what was going on. Although magi were at the peak of the magic world, the magic machines that New Flyer researched weren't only related to magic. More importantly, it was the combination of magic and machines. After so many years of research and development in New Flyer, the theory of magic machines had already formed a theoretical system that was completely different from magic. Even if Cray the Sorcerer's research in magic could be said to be at the peak of perfection, that didn't mean that he was equally familiar with the theory of magic machines. Elder Elucia was also at the level of a great magus, and had a close relationship with Shinfei for so many years. Of course she knew this better than many people. Even if it was her, if Su-Yi took out some of the new flyer's internal research data and placed it in front of her, she probably wouldn't be able to understand it. This actually represented a fact that made Su-Yi excited. As the research on magic machines became more and more profound, the various types of machines would become more and more detailed, and the specialization would become stronger and stronger. The end result was very likely to be similar to industrial research on Earth. No matter how talented a researcher was in a certain field, they could only be limited to the area they researched. As for other areas outside of their field, they could only be considered to have a superficial understanding. But, since you've let him join the Academy of Magic, then he'll eventually come into contact with and grasp some technical data. You can't just let him be a decoration, right? Elder Elucia asked again. Of course, he's a magus. He's currently the most talented person in magic research. How can I let him be a decoration and waste such a talent? Su-Yi immediately said excitedly. I've already thought about it. I'll give him half a year's time to start from the basics. After he's created a basic system of knowledge on magic machines, I'll let him start on the other high-end magic machine theories that I've thought about countless times. I've wanted to let people start on these things for a long time, but it's a pity that teacher Carmilla is too busy. Now that Cray the Sorcerer has joined, it'll be much easier, haha. Elder Elucia speechlessly shook her head as she watched Su-Yi laugh maniacally. She and Su-Yi had known each other for more than 10 years, but she had always found that she couldn't truly understand Su-Yi's thoughts. Although humans were originally a complicated creature in the eyes of the elves, Su-Yi was a bit too complicated even among humans. Elder Elucia decided to give up on thinking about Su-Yi's thoughts. In any case, this guy had done many things that were considered crazy by others over the years, but so far, there had never been any major problems, so there was no need for others to worry about him. As an elder of the Nightsong tribe, she had to first worry about her own tribe. Chairman Su, let's talk about business. Regarding the manpower for this voyage, have you already considered it? Chapter 1002. Hearing this question, Su-Yi immediately stopped laughing. After thinking for a bit, he replied, It's basically confirmed. Elder Elucia, have you chosen the people on your side? Yes, I have already chosen a team of 10 people. When the time comes, they will set off with you. I hope you can help make arrangements for them. No problem. Bring them over next time, and I'll bring them to meet with Noir. Noir is the overall commander of this expedition, so he will make arrangements. Okay. Elder Elucia nodded and smiled at Su-Yi. Chairman Su, our Nightsong tribe has been enjoying your help for so many years, but we can't repay you too much. I'm really sorry. Su-Yi was stunned. Then his eyes widened in disbelief. He stared at Elder Elucia from top to bottom, and then from bottom to top several times. Elder Elucia felt uncomfortable being stared at by him. She couldn't help but ask, Chairman Su, did I say something wrong? No. You didn't say anything wrong. It's just that. Su-Yi had a very strange expression on his face. Elder Elucia, this is a standard courtesy between us humans. Coming from your mouth, I really feel strange. Courtesy? Elder Elucia shook her head. This isn't courtesy, but my feelings from the bottom of my heart. We elves worship nature and balance. If we keep receiving favors from others and can't repay them, it really makes me feel very embarrassed. Su-Yi speechlessly wiped his face. He waved his hand and said, That's enough, Elder Elucia. It's better if you don't take it so seriously. I've already discussed this with you a long time ago. The reason why I chose to help your Nightsong tribe is because I want to include the elves in my ideal magic industry system. After so many years, you have developed very well. Now you have become an indispensable part of this system. For me, this is enough. As for other rewards, do you think I lack anything? Elder Elucia tilted her head and thought for a moment before shaking her head helplessly. You don't lack anything that we have. That's why we can't repay you. All right, let's not dwell on this issue. Su-Yi smiled bitterly and waved his hand again, deciding to end this topic. He was very clear about the stubborn nature of the elves. If he really continued to discuss with Elder Elucia, who knew what she would think in the end? To be honest, I'm actually quite curious as to why you elven clans must send people to participate in this expedition, Su-Yi said after thinking for a while. This is only our Chamber of Commerce's first ocean exploration. There are too many unknown dangers. If we rashly send people, we may suffer unexpected losses. This was indeed a question that Su-Yi had been wondering for a long time. After learning that the Frestek Chamber of Commerce was planning a fleet to explore the seas, it wasn't just Elder Elucia who wanted to send her tribe's elves to participate. Even Elder Lysania and Elder Undine said that the Moon Shadow tribe and the Azhara tribe would send people to participate. This made Su-Yi feel very strange. He didn't understand why these three elven clans were so enthusiastic about this expedition. If Lumi, the halfling, knew that Su-Yi finally decided to organize an ocean exploration fleet, she would be so excited that she couldn't sleep for a few days. After all, she had always been looking forward to going to another legendary continent to find her clansmen. However, the elves didn't have a history of all of their clansmen migrating away from the signs. Why were they so enthusiastic? We just want to find out some things. Elder Elucia revealed a smile, but the answer she gave was very vague. It was clear that she didn't want to explain this problem. Su-Yi knit his brows. He knew that if Elder Elucia wasn't willing to say it, it was no use asking, so he could only give up. Anyway, the ocean exploration fleet would have 5 large magic ships and 15 guard magic ships, so it didn't matter if there were several dozen more elves. Compared to this, Su-Yi attached more importance to this ocean exploration mission. Through the legends that spread through the signs, Su-Yi was certain that there wasn't just one continent on the signs and there should be other continents. If he could explore this continent, it would mean expanding the world that Su-Yi understood. Other than satisfying his spiritual needs, the more practical meaning was that he could bring more land and resources, as well as possibly more people into the magic machine industry system that he planned. Not only did it take time to create a complete magic machine industry system, it also needed a large amount of people. If more people could participate in it, it would naturally be able to develop faster. Also, from a very realistic point of view, the signs were stable right now. Almost all the land had been taken by the various countries and the various resources were firmly controlled by these countries. Although New Flyer relied on its dominant position in the magic machine industry to cooperate with most of the countries on the continent, allowing it to obtain large amounts of resources to support its development. But if these resources weren't in their hands, it wasn't reliable. Although Su-Yi could do what Seveni suggested several years ago and keep starting wars to occupy more land for the Frestek Chamber of Commerce, even if the Frestek Chamber of Commerce's current strength could deter all the countries on the continent, making them not dare easily invade them, if they wanted to attack other countries, it wouldn't be enough. In the end, New Flyer was only a company and not a country. For the New Flyer Guards, it wasn't hard for them to defeat the armies of another country, but if they wanted to take over and rule this country, it was almost impossible. Therefore, under such circumstances, exploring more land and searching for more resources was one of the most effective choices. Actually, when Su-Yi first met Lumi and confirmed that there was another continent in this world, he already had this idea. But after several years of accumulation and preparation, he finally confirmed the formation of this fleet and could officially carry out ocean exploration. Regarding this matter, not only was Lumi excited, Su-yi was also very excited. Because this was simply the beginning of an era of great navigation in this world. Half a month later, after half a year of preparation, the new Flyer Ocean Exploration Fleet finally set sail. For this matter of great significance, the major newspapers and signs all reported it in great detail. The opinions of all the newspapers on this matter were shockingly consistent. The new Flyer's ocean exploration this time was very likely to change the history of signs. Before this, there were countless legends about another continent circulating in signs, but they had never been confirmed. If the new Flyer Ocean Exploration Fleet could really explore another continent, then not only would this legend be confirmed, but it would also change the worldview of the entire signs. Before this, the people of signs generally believed that this world was made up of this continent and the boundless, endless ocean. Even if there were islands in the endless ocean, they were not worth mentioning compared to signs, so signs was naturally the center of this world. But if the new Flyer Ocean Exploration Fleet confirmed the existence of another continent, wouldn't that mean that signs was not the only continent in this world, and naturally not the center of this world? Regarding this possibility, the people were both hopeful and worried. Of course, they hoped to discover another continent, to discover the legendary creatures that lived on the other continent, as well as the legendary halflings that crossed the endless ocean and lived on the other continent, and other races that had long disappeared in signs. They were worried that if signs was not the center of this world, then where was the center? The new Flyer Ocean Exploration Fleet set off from the port of the New Flight Commerce main base and set off towards the west of the endless ocean with the attention of countless people. According to Su-yi's rough calculations after observing various details over the years, he could determine that the planet Signs was located on had almost the same autobiographical time as Earth, and the radius was almost the same, so basically, he could apply the basic knowledge of Earth's geography. Then, according to the fleet's speed of more than 500 kilometers per day, if everything went well, they would only need a little more than 3 months to sail around the planet. Of course, the first voyage would not be so smooth, so Su-yi estimated that it would take them 1 year. This did not mean that Su-yi did not have confidence in them. On the contrary, he was very confident in the smooth completion of this voyage exploration. After all, when Magellan first circumnavigated the world on Earth, he was only on a dilapidated wooden ship, which was far worse than this voyage exploration fleet in all aspects. If Magellan could successfully end his voyage, there was no way this voyage exploration fleet couldn't. The only thing he was worried about was that, if they really explored another continent, they might encounter all kinds of accidents on that continent. But these worries had already been thrown to the back of Su-yi's mind when he saw the fleet disappear into the distant sea. Since the fleet had already set sail, he could no longer do anything else. Compared to that, it was more important to focus on the upcoming Magic Industry Standards meeting. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.